When I was 15, my parents kicked me out so my older sister could have her own bedroom. When I asked them where I should go, Mom grinned. Figure it out, darky. That was 7 months ago. Today, they're both begging for forgiveness. My dad is black and my mom is white. I look really black while my older sister Kate looks more white. This one feature has affected my entire life. You see, despite my dad being black, he has extreme colorism against black people, while my mom is just straight up racist. To her, my dad is the only exception. Me and Kate are only 2 years apart, but growing up, our experiences were very different. Every birthday of hers was celebrated, not only with a cake, but also huge birthday blowouts every day for her entire birth week. Meanwhile, my birthday was just another day in the year. However, instead of soaking up all the attention and hating me as much as our parents did, Kate would always be kind to me when they weren't looking. On my 9th birthday, Kate knew our parents wouldn't do anything for me, so she asked them if she could celebrate her birthday on my day. Of course, they said yes, and when the day came, she let me choose who to invite. When it was time for the cake, Kate distracted my parents and brought them into another room so everyone could sing happy birthday for me. It was one of the happiest days of my life. Another time, when we got our report cards and she got all C's while I got B's, she knew my parents would likely wail on me for not getting A's. So while they were reading my report card, she begged them not to hurt me because she didn't like violence. So they ended up just pinching me a few times. So even though my parents basically saw me as a cotton picker, as they called me, I still felt lucky because Kate was always there until one day when she turned her back on me. It was her 17th birthday. I woke up to the sound of not just my mom, not just my dad, but my entire family throwing all of my belongings into boxes. Your sister said all she wants for her birthday is her own room. Sorry, is the first thing my dad said when I asked what was going on. My eyes widened, and I asked them where I was supposed to go because there were no other rooms in the house. My mom chimed in, I don't know. You have phone numbers of friends and family. Figure it out, darky. Tears filled my eyes, and I looked over at Kate, who refused to make eye contact with me. Her entire body was tense. It took almost half an hour of convincing before I finally believed it wasn't some weird prank. I immediately started to howl with a deep sadness because the one thing I was holding on to, the one ally I had in the house, had abandoned me. And even as I curled into a ball and started to rock back and forth with a loneliness that I can't describe with words, they ignored me, just kept packing. By this point, my flight or fight kicked in. I numbed my emotions before walking out and calling the only other family member I trusted, my aunt, on my dad's side. After Kate's betrayal, I had no idea what she'd say, but she immediately said I could come over and stay for as long as I needed. I didn't eat breakfast that morning, didn't even give Kate her gift, just took the boxes, ordered an Uber, and left. But on the way there, Kate called me. I was filled with hate as I saw her name pop up on the screen, but picked up anyway. I'm so sorry, please don't hate me. My eyebrows furrowed, and I went completely silent. Are you alone right now? She asked. I told her yes. Kate didn't say anything else. She just turned on FaceTime and showed me a pregnancy test, with 2 pink lines. It was hers. I gasped. Lily, I'm pregnant. I don't want to tell mom and dad yet because, well, you know how they can be, but I don't want you to be home when they find out. I thought back to the time when Kate came home with a hickey. My parents shouted at me for almost an hour, telling me how bad of an influence I was, how it was all my fault. So I understood. Kate, what can I do to help? I asked. She told me to ask for her help from our Aunt Bonnie. Suddenly, I could hear my parents walking up the stairs singing happy birthday, so I hung up. My mind was spinning. A part of me was relieved that Kate was still my best friend, but mostly, I was just worried, very worried. And when I got to my Aunt Bonnie's, my stomach twisted into a pretzel knot because she opened the door, gave me a huge smile, and hugged me super tight. I'm so happy you visited. I never told her what had happened, and clearly my parents didn't either. We were in the middle of polite, introductory small talk when I just blurted it out. My parents are racist and my sister is pregnant. The second I said it, she laughed, thinking it was some sort of joke. And that's when I started bawling my eyes out. By this point, we had already taken in the boxes, so we went inside and she listened while I talked. I made her promise not to tell my parents, and she swore she wouldn't. The next hour consisted of me completely unloading everything. The racism, the favoritism, getting kicked out. She promised I would be safe with her, and held me while I cried myself to sleep. I didn't know it at the time, but Aunt Bonnie was about to make my parents pay. Me and Kate's lives were about to change forever. When I woke up the next morning on Aunt Bonnie's couch, I had that brief moment of confusion where I didn't know where I was. Then it all came rushing back. Getting kicked out, Kate's pregnancy, everything. My eyes felt swollen from crying, and my back hurt from sleeping in a weird position. I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Kate, but nothing from my parents. Not surprising, but it still stung. I could hear Aunt Bonnie in the kitchen making breakfast. The smell of bacon and eggs filled the apartment. My stomach growled loudly. I hadn't eaten since lunch the day before. Good morning, sleepyhead, Aunt Bonnie said when I shuffled into the kitchen. She looked like she'd been up for hours already. I made you some breakfast. Eat up. We've got a lot to talk about. I sat down at her small kitchen table and started eating. The food was amazing. Or maybe I was just starving. Either way, I practically inhaled it while Aunt Bonnie sat across from me, sipping her coffee. I've been thinking about everything you told me, she said after I'd eaten about half my plate, and I need to ask you something important. Has your dad ever hit you? I almost choked on my orange juice. Nobody had ever asked me that directly before. Not like, punched me or anything, I mumbled. Just some slaps, pinches, that kind of stuff. Aunt Bonnie's face darkened. That's still abuse, Lily. And the emotional stuff, the way they treat you differently from Kate, that's abuse too. I just stared at my plate. When someone actually says it out loud like that, it hits different. I'd always known something was wrong with how my parents treated me, but hearing someone call it abuse made me feel both validated and weirdly ashamed. I'm calling your parents after breakfast, she continued. First, to tell them you're staying with me for now. Second, to let them know I'm aware of how they've been treating you. My heart started racing. But what about Kate? If you tell them you know everything, they'll realize I told you about the pregnancy. I won't mention the pregnancy, Aunt Bonnie assured me. That's Kate's news to share when she's ready. But the rest, they need to hear it. After breakfast, I called Kate back while Aunt Bonnie cleaned up. Kate answered immediately. sounding stressed out of her mind. Are you okay? Where are you? Did Aunt Bonnie let you stay? The questions came rapid fire. I told her I was fine and staying at Aunt Bonnie's place. She sounded relieved, but still anxious. I asked how she was doing and if our parents suspected anything. They don't suspect a thing, Kate said. They're too busy redecorating my room now that it's all mine. She sounded guilty saying it. Lily, I'm so sorry. I should have found another way. I wasn't completely over being hurt, but I understood why she did it. It's okay, I said. But Kate, what's your plan? You can't hide a pregnancy forever. Kate started crying softly. I don't know. I'm scared to tell them. You know how they'll react. I knew exactly how they'd react. They'd blame me somehow, even though I had nothing to do with it. They'd shame Kate, but ultimately forgive her. They'd make everything worse. What about the father? I asked. Is he in the picture? It's Tyler, Kate said. You know, from my chemistry class? His parents are super religious. If they find out, he's screwed. We both are. Tyler Williams. I knew him vaguely. Tall, quiet guy who played baseball. Not someone I would have expected Kate to date secretly. Have you thought about what you want to do? I asked carefully. Like, do you want to keep it or? I don't know yet, Kate admitted. I need time to figure it out. Can you ask Aunt Bonnie if she'll help me? Maybe I can come over and we can talk? I promised to ask Aunt Bonnie and told Kate to hang tight. Right after we hung up, I heard Aunt Bonnie on the phone in the living room. Her voice was raised, and even though I couldn't make out every word, I could tell she was laying into someone, my parents probably. I sat on the edge of the bed in Aunt Bonnie's spare room where she'd moved my boxes. Part of me wanted to eavesdrop, but another part was scared to hear what she was saying. After what felt like forever, the apartment went quiet. A minute later, Aunt Bonnie appeared in the doorway. Well, I just had a nice chat with your father, she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. He claims they didn't kick you out, just suggested you might want to stay with friends for a while. I snorted. Yeah, right. They literally packed all my stuff. I know, Aunt Bonnie said, sitting down next to me. Your dad's always been good at rewriting history, but I made it clear you're staying with me for now, and we'll be having a family meeting soon to discuss how they've been treating you. My stomach dropped. A family meeting? With them? Do we have to? Eventually, yes, she said, but not right away. First, I want to get you settled here, and I get the feeling there's something you want to ask me. I nodded. Kate wants to know if she can come over to talk to you. About, you know, her situation. Aunt Bonnie smiled. Of course she can. Tell her to come over tomorrow after school. I'll make sure to be home early from work. The rest of that day was weird but nice. Aunt Bonnie helped me unpack my stuff in her spare room. It was small but way nicer than sharing with Kate. I had my own desk, a queen-sized bed, and actual privacy. Aunt Bonnie even took me shopping for some decorations to make the room feel more like mine. While we were out, I kept checking my phone. No messages from my parents. Not even a, "Are you okay?" or "We miss you." Just silence. Kate texted that she'd come over tomorrow around 4 p.m. to talk to Aunt Bonnie. That night, Aunt Bonnie ordered pizza and we watched movies on her couch. It felt so normal, like what I imagined other families did regularly. No walking on eggshells, no feeling like a burden just for existing, just relaxing and enjoying each other's company. You know, Aunt Bonnie said during a quiet moment, I always wanted kids of my own. Never worked out that way. But having you here, it's nice. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just smiled and focused on the movie. But something warm settled in my chest. For the first time in ages, I fell asleep feeling safe. The next day was a Tuesday. Aunt Bonnie had to work, but she left me a key and said to make myself at home. I spent the morning exploring her apartment and the afternoon doing some homework I'd brought with me. At 3:30, I started getting anxious about Kate's visit. Kate showed up right at 4, looking nervous but relieved to see me. We hugged for a long time in the doorway before I pulled her inside. This place is nice, she said, looking around. Aunt Bonnie's not home yet? She should be here any minute, I said. Want some water or something? Kate nodded and followed me to the kitchen. She looked pale and tired, like she hadn't slept well. We sat at the kitchen table in awkward silence for a few minutes before she spoke. Mom and Dad think I'm at debate team practice, she said. They don't suspect anything yet, but Mom made a comment about me gaining weight this morning. I almost had a panic attack. Before I could respond, we heard keys in the door. Aunt Bonnie walked in, still in her work clothes, carrying a bag of groceries. Her face lit up when she saw Kate. There's my other niece, she said warmly, setting down the groceries to give Kate a hug. Kate burst into tears the moment Aunt Bonnie's arms went around her. The next hour was intense. Kate told Aunt Bonnie everything. About Tyler, about being 8 weeks pregnant, about being terrified of our parents finding out. Aunt Bonnie listened carefully, asking questions, but never judging. Have you decided what you want to do? Aunt Bonnie asked gently. Kate shook her head. I don't know. I'm only 16. I'm supposed to go to college next year, but I also don't know if I could go through with an abortion. She started crying again. And adoption? I don't know. You have options, Aunt Bonnie said, and time to decide. But first, you need to see a doctor. Make sure everything's okay. I can take you if you want. Kate nodded gratefully. Could you? I'm scared to go alone, and I can't ask Mom. Of course, Aunt Bonnie said. And Kate, whatever you decide, I'll support you, even if your parents don't. Kate looked at me then, her eyes still wet with tears. I'm so sorry about what happened, Lily. I just panicked. I thought if they found out while you were still there. It's okay, I said, meaning it this time. I get it. And honestly, it's better here anyway. After Kate left, promising to text us about setting up a doctor's appointment, I helped Aunt Bonnie make dinner. My mind was spinning with everything that was happening. Kate's pregnancy, my new living situation, the inevitable confrontation with my parents that Aunt Bonnie was planning. Aunt Bonnie, I said as we chopped vegetables, what's going to happen when my parents find out about Kate? She sighed. I don't know, honey, but we'll face it together, all three of us. The next week was surprisingly peaceful. I settled into a routine at Aunt Bonnie's place. She'd wake me up for school, drop me off on her way to work, and pick me up afterward. We'd make dinner together, watch TV, and talk. She asked me questions about my interests, my friends, my classes, all the normal stuff parents are supposed to care about. but mine never did. Kate came over a few times after school, supposedly for debate team research. Aunt Bonnie took her to a doctor's appointment, confirming she was indeed about 9 weeks pregnant. Kate was still undecided about what to do, but at least now she was getting proper prenatal care in the meantime. My parents? Radio silence. Not a single call or text asking how I was. Kate said they barely mentioned me at home, like I'd just ceased to exist. It hurt, but it also confirmed what I'd always suspected. They didn't really love me the way parents are supposed to love their kids. Then on Friday evening, everything blew up. Kate called me in a panic. Mom found my prenatal vitamins, she said, her voice shaking. She put it together with me gaining weight. She knows Lily. She knows I'm pregnant. My heart sank. What happened? What did she say? She went ballistic. Kate sobbed, started screaming about how I'd ruined my life, how no decent college would accept me now, how I'd brought shame on the family. Dad came home in the middle of it and lost his mind too. I put Kate on speaker so Aunt Bonnie could hear. Are you safe? Aunt Bonnie asked immediately. I'm in my room with the door locked, Kate said, but they keep pounding on the door, demanding I come out and face the consequences of my actions. I'm scared. Aunt Bonnie grabbed her car keys. We're coming to get you. Pack a bag with essentials. You can stay here too. The drive to my parents' house was tense. Aunt Bonnie drove like a woman on a mission, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. I sat in the passenger seat, texting Kate updates on our location. She wasn't responding anymore, which made my anxiety spike. When we pulled up to the house, I felt sick to my stomach. I hadn't been back since the day they kicked me out. The porch light was on, and both my parents' cars were in the driveway. Stay in the car, Aunt Bonnie instructed as she put the car in park. No way, I protested. Kate's my sister. I'm coming with you. Aunt Bonnie looked like she wanted to argue, but nodded instead. We walked up to the front door together, and she rang the doorbell. The sound of shouting from inside immediately stopped. A moment later, my dad yanked the door open. His expression changed rapidly from anger to surprise to a forced smile when he saw Aunt Bonnie. Bonnie, what a surprise, he said, completely ignoring my existence beside her. What brings you by so late? Cut the crap, Marcus, Aunt Bonnie said coldly. We're here for Kate. She called us. My mom appeared behind him, her face blotchy from crying or yelling or both. This is a family matter, Bonnie. You shouldn't be involved. I am family, Aunt Bonnie shot back. And so is Lily, though you seem to have forgotten that. Where's Kate? In her room, having a teenage tantrum, my dad said dismissively. She can come out when she's ready to discuss her options rationally. The way he said options made my skin crawl. I knew exactly what option he thought was rational. Let me go get her, I said, already moving toward the stairs. My mom tried to block my path. You don't live here anymore, Lily. You can't just move, Aunt Bonnie said, her voice so authoritative that my mom actually stepped aside. I ran upstairs to Kate's room, my old room too, and knocked gently. Kate, it's me. Open up. The door cracked open, and Kate peeked out, her face streaked with tears. When she saw it was really me, she flung the door open and hugged me tight. Thank God you're here, she whispered. They've lost their minds. Dad says I have to get an abortion, or he'll throw me out. Mom keeps crying about what people at church will say. Pack your stuff, I told her. You're coming to stay with me and Aunt Bonnie. Kate nodded and quickly grabbed a duffel bag, shoving clothes and toiletries inside. I helped her pack, grabbing things she missed, her laptop charger, her favorite sweater, the stuffed bear she'd given me years ago that had somehow survived the purge of my belongings. When we came back downstairs with her bag, my parents were still arguing with Aunt Bonnie in the entryway. You can't just take her, my mom was saying. She's 16. She's still a minor. Watch me, Aunt Bonnie replied. Unless you want me to call Child Protective Services and report how you've treated both your daughters, I suggest you step aside. My dad's face turned an alarming shade of red. Is that a threat? You have no proof of anything. I have Lily's testimony, Aunt Bonnie said calmly. And now I have evidence of you trying to force Kate into a medical procedure against her will. Do you really want to test me on this, Marcus? My parents exchanged a look. For the first time in my life, I saw something like fear in their eyes. Kate can make her own decisions when she turns 18, my mom said, changing tactics. For now, she stays here where we can take care of her. Take care of her like you took care of me? I blurted out. By treating her like garbage if she doesn't do exactly what you want? My dad finally acknowledged my presence with a glare. You don't know what you're talking about. We've always provided for both of you. Providing food and shelter is the bare minimum. I shot back. You never loved me. And now that Kate's done something you don't approve of, you're treating her the same way. Kate stepped forward, clutching her bag. I'm going with Aunt Bonnie and Lily. I'll be back when you're ready to support me no matter what I decide about my baby. My mom started crying again, but it felt manipulative rather than genuine. Kate, please, think about your future. I am thinking about my future, Kate said firmly. And right now, it's not here. We walked out of the house together, my parents too shocked to physically stop us. As we drove away, I looked back to see them standing in the doorway, watching us go. They looked small and pathetic somehow, no longer the towering figures of authority they'd been in my mind for so long. The next few days were adjustment. Kate took my bed while I slept on the pull-out couch. Aunt Bonnie's small apartment felt crowded with 3 people, but also warm and safe in a way our parents' house never had. My parents called Kate's phone constantly for the first 2 days, alternating between threats and tearful pleas for her to come home. She eventually turned off her phone to get some peace. They didn't call me once. On the 3rd day, I was alone in the apartment while Aunt Bonnie was at work, and Kate was at her follow-up doctor's appointment. The doorbell rang, and when I looked through the peephole, I nearly had a heart attack. My parents were standing there. I called Aunt Bonnie immediately. They're here, I whispered into the phone. Mom and Dad are at the door. Don't let them in, she said firmly. I'm leaving work now. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The doorbell rang again, followed by pounding. Lily, we know you're in there, my dad shouted. Open this door right now. I stayed quiet, hoping they'd give up and leave. They didn't. After a few minutes, I heard a key in the lock. The door swung open, revealing my parents. My dad was holding a key. Aunt Bonnie gave us a spare key once when she went on vacation, he explained, his voice calmer now. In case of an emergency with her plants and mail. I backed away from them. This isn't an emergency. You need to leave. My mom stepped inside, looking around the apartment. Where's Kate? We need to talk to her. She's not here, I said truthfully. And I already called Aunt Bonnie. She's on her way home. My dad sighed heavily. Lily, this has gone far enough. You've made your point. But Kate needs to come home now. She's still a minor, and what Bonnie's doing could be considered kidnapping. She didn't kidnap anyone, I snapped. Kate chose to leave because you were forcing her to get an abortion. We weren't forcing her, my mom said, though her eyes slid away from mine. We were just trying to help her see the right choice. The right choice according to who? You? I was furious now. It's her body, her baby, her choice. My dad took a step toward me, and I instinctively stepped back. Something flashed in his eyes. Hurt, maybe, that I was afraid of him. Good. He should feel bad. This isn't about you, Lily, he said. You always make everything about yourself. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you serious right now? You kicked me out of the house for Kate's birthday. You've treated me like I'm nothing my entire life. And now you have the nerve to say I make everything about myself? Before they could respond, the apartment door flew open again. Aunt Bonnie stood there looking furious. Behind her was Kate, her face pale with shock at seeing our parents. Get out of my apartment, Aunt Bonnie said to my parents, her voice deadly calm. Not without Kate, my dad replied, turning to look at my sister. Come on, Kate. This has gone on long enough. Come home where you belong. Kate moved to stand beside me and Aunt Bonnie. I'm not going anywhere with you. Not until you accept that this is my decision to make. My mom started crying again. Kate, please. We just want what's best for you. No, you want what's easiest for you, Kate shot back. What's best for your reputation. You don't care about what I want or need. That's not true, my dad protested. We love you. Like you love Lily? Kate asked pointedly. That shut them up. They looked at me, then at each other, clearly not knowing how to respond. Aunt Bonnie stepped forward. I think it's time we all had that family meeting I mentioned. Sit down, both of you. She gestured to the couch. Surprisingly, my parents sat. Maybe they were shocked by Aunt Bonnie's authority, or maybe they finally realized the seriousness of the situation. Either way, for the next 2 hours, we talked. Really talked. Kate explained how terrified she was when she found out she was pregnant, how she knew our parents would react badly. I told them how their treatment had affected me all my life. The birthdays, the report cards, the constant feeling of being less than. Aunt Bonnie shared her perspective as an outsider who had watched their behavior for years without saying anything, something she now regretted. My parents mostly listened, occasionally trying to defend themselves but getting shut down quickly. By the end, my mom was crying for real, not the manipulative tears from before. My dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in one afternoon. I didn't realize, he said finally, his voice rough. I didn't see what we were doing. Bull, Aunt Bonnie said flatly. You saw. You just didn't care. The question is whether you care now. My mom looked at me through her tears. Lily, I'm so sorry. We've been terrible parents to you. It was the first genuine apology I'd ever heard from her. I didn't know what to do with it. Part of me wanted to accept it immediately, to have the loving parents I'd always wanted. Another part wanted to tell them to go to hell. Sorry doesn't fix 16 years, I said eventually, but it's a start. The conversation shifted to Kate and her pregnancy. Our parents were still clearly unhappy about it, but they stopped pushing for an abortion. Instead, they actually listened as Kate talked about her options, keeping the baby, adoption, or termination, and her fears about each choice. By the time they left, nothing was resolved, but something had shifted. They promised to respect whatever decision Kate made about her pregnancy. They invited both of us to come home, but also said they understood if we wanted to stay with Aunt Bonnie for now. As Aunt Bonnie closed the door behind them, the three of us collapsed onto the couch, emotionally exhausted. Do you think they meant it? Kate asked quietly. About supporting my decision? I don't know, Aunt Bonnie said honestly. People don't change overnight, but they might be starting to see the damage they've done. I wasn't convinced. One conversation, no matter how intense, couldn't undo a lifetime of behavior. But for the first time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, things could be different. That night, as I lay on the pull-out couch staring at the ceiling, I thought about everything that had happened. In less than 2 weeks, my entire life had been turned upside down. I'd lost my home, gained an ally in Aunt Bonnie, and somehow ended up in a strange new dynamic with my parents. Kate came out of the bedroom and sat at the edge of my makeshift bed. Can't sleep? I asked. She shook her head. Too much going on in here. She tapped her temple. Lily, do you think I should give them another chance? I sat up. That's your call. They're still our parents, for better or worse. I'm scared they'll go back to how they were before, she admitted. That they'll pressure me about the baby or treat you badly again. Probably, I said honestly. People don't change that easily. But now we have Aunt Bonnie, and we have each other. Kate smiled a little. We've always had each other. She paused, then added, I think I want to keep the baby. Is that crazy? I reached out and squeezed her hand. Not crazy. Scary. Sure, but you'll be an amazing mom. Better than ours at least, Kate said with a bitter laugh. As we sat there in the dark, I realized something important. No matter what happened with our parents, whether they truly changed or just pretended to, Kate and I would be okay. We had survived this far. We would keep surviving, together. The journey ahead would be complicated. Kate's pregnancy, my uncertain living situation, our fractured relationship with our parents. But for the first time, I felt like we weren't facing it alone. The next morning, I woke up with a weird sense of hope, mixed with doubt. Kate was curled up next to me on the pull-out couch, having fallen asleep there after our late-night talk. She looked peaceful for once, one hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach. I carefully got up without waking her, and found Aunt Bonnie in the kitchen making pancakes. Morning, she said, sliding a stack onto a plate for me. How'd you sleep? Okay, I guess, I said, dousing the pancakes in syrup. Kate told me she wants to keep the baby. Aunt Bonnie nodded, not looking surprised. I figured she might. That girl's got a nurturing spirit, always has. She sat down across from me. How do you feel about becoming an aunt? I hadn't really thought about it that way. Weird. Good weird, though. We ate in comfortable silence until Kate shuffled in, hair sticking up in all directions. Aunt Bonnie wordlessly passed her a plate of pancakes, which she accepted gratefully. So what happens now? I asked after we'd all eaten. Now we figure out a game plan, Aunt Bonnie said. Kate needs to finish school. You both need stability, and your parents need to prove they're serious about changing. Kate looked down at her empty plate. I should probably talk to Tyler too. He deserves to know what I'm deciding. That conversation happened later that day. Tyler came over looking terrified, probably expecting Aunt Bonnie to tear him a new one. Instead, she offered him lemonade and gave them privacy to talk in the bedroom while I pretended not to eavesdrop from the hallway. I couldn't hear everything, but Tyler's reaction surprised me. No arguing or denying responsibility. Instead, he kept saying stuff like, whatever you need, and I'll be there. When they came out an hour later, Kate looked relieved, and Tyler looked determined, if still scared. I'll tell my parents tonight, he promised before leaving. They'll freak, but they're big on responsibility. They won't let me bail. After he left, Kate flopped down next to me on the couch. Well, that went better than expected. He seems decent, I admitted. He is, Kate said, scared out of his mind, but decent. The next couple days passed in a blur of planning. Aunt Bonnie called our parents for another meeting, this time with all of us plus Tyler and his parents. Talk about awkward. Tyler's parents were shocked but rallied quickly, especially his mom. My parents were stiff and formal, but at least they weren't yelling. The adults talked about practical stuff, medical insurance, living arrangements, school plans. I mostly sat quietly, watching everyone's faces. My dad kept looking at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. This weird mix of guilt and something else I couldn't identify. My mom barely made eye contact with anyone. After that meeting, our parents asked if we'd consider coming home for dinner that weekend. A fresh start, my mom called it. Kate immediately looked at me. Up to Lily, she said firmly. I go where she goes. My dad nodded slowly. Fair enough. I agreed, but only if Aunt Bonnie came too. No way was I walking back into that house without my backup. They reluctantly said yes. That Friday night was the most uncomfortable dinner of my life. My mom had clearly spent hours cooking all our favorite foods, even remembering mine correctly, which was a first. The conversation was strained, everyone trying too hard to be polite. Halfway through dinner, my dad cleared his throat. I've been doing some reading, he said awkwardly, about colorism and how it affects children. He looked directly at me. I never realized what I was doing to you, Lily. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just a chance to try to be better. I almost choked on my mashed potatoes. My dad, reading about colorism, admitting he was wrong. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. My mom jumped in next. We've also found a family therapist, she said. For all of us, if you girls are willing. We have a lot to work through. I looked at Kate, who raised her eyebrows like, what do you think? Maybe, I said cautiously. We'll think about it. After dinner, my dad awkwardly showed me my old room, except it wasn't my old room anymore. They'd completely redone it. New paint, new furniture, even a fancy desk for studying. It was nice. Way nicer than what I'd had before. We thought, if you wanted to come back. He trailed off. I don't know yet, I said honestly. This is all happening really fast. He nodded. I understand. The room's yours whenever you want it. No pressure. That night, back at Aunt Bonnie's, Kate and I stayed up late talking. She was torn about moving back home. On one hand, they were being surprisingly supportive about the baby now. On the other hand, we both knew how quickly they could flip. What do you think? She asked me. Should we give them another chance? I sighed. I don't know. Part of me wants to believe they've changed. Another part is waiting for them to go back to normal. Same, Kate admitted. But I also feel bad about taking advantage of Aunt Bonnie. Her apartment's tiny for 3 people, let alone 4 once the baby comes. That was a good point. Aunt Bonnie had been amazing, but this wasn't a long-term solution. We decided to talk to Aunt Bonnie about it in the morning. When we brought it up over breakfast, she surprised us. I've actually been thinking about this, she said. I've been looking at 3-bedroom apartments, more space for all of us. You want us to stay with you permanently? Kate asked, sounding shocked. Aunt Bonnie shrugged. If that's what you want, or you could try going home, with the understanding that my door is always open if things don't work out. We talked it through for hours. By the end, we had a plan. Kate and I would move back home on a trial basis. We'd attend family therapy. We'd spend weekends with Aunt Bonnie. And at the first sign of our parents reverting to their old ways, we'd be out of there. Moving back was weird. My parents were trying so hard it was almost uncomfortable. My dad kept asking about my schoolwork and offering to help. My mom suddenly wanted to know about my friends and interests. They both fussed over Kate, making sure she ate properly and got enough rest. Family therapy was even weirder. Our therapist, Dr. Chen, didn't let anyone get away with anything. When my dad tried to downplay some of the things he'd done, she called him out immediately. When my mom cried about how hard it was for her, Dr. Chen pointed out how much harder it had been for me. The breakthrough came about a month in. We were talking about birthdays, specifically how they'd celebrated Kate's but ignored mine. My mom started with her usual excuses about being busy or tight on money. That doesn't explain the pattern, doctor, Chen said calmly. Why was money always tight for Lily's birthday but never for Kate's? My mom went silent. Then, to my complete shock, she turned to me with tears in her eyes. Because I'm racist, she said simply. I didn't want to admit it, even to myself, but I treated you differently because you look more black, and that's unforgivable. The room went dead quiet. My dad looked like he'd been punched. Kate reached over and squeezed my hand. I don't know if it's unforgivable, I said finally, but it really messed me up. My mom nodded, tears streaming down her face. I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right, if you'll let me. It wasn't an instant fix. There were still awkward moments, still times when they'd slip into old habits and I'd have to call them out. But that confession was the first time I believed they might actually be changing. Meanwhile, Kate's pregnancy was progressing. Her first ultrasound was a big deal. We all went, even Tyler. Seeing that tiny blob on the screen made everything more real. Kate cried. Tyler looked terrified but held her hand the whole time. My parents stood awkwardly in the corner until the technician asked if they wanted to see their future grandchild. After that, my mom couldn't stop talking about baby stuff. By the time Kate was showing, our family had fallen into a new routine. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. My parents were trying consistently. I was cautiously letting them back in. Kate was glowing despite the morning sickness and swollen ankles. We still spent every other weekend with Aunt Bonnie. Those weekends became my favorite. Just the three of us hanging out, watching movies, talking about everything and nothing. Aunt Bonnie never pressured us about our parents. She just listened and offered advice when asked. One Saturday at Aunt Bonnie's, Kate grabbed her stomach suddenly while we were watching TV. My heart nearly stopped until she laughed. "The baby's kicking!" she exclaimed. "Here, feel." She grabbed my hand and placed it on her rounded belly. Sure enough, I felt a little thump against my palm. It was the weirdest, coolest thing I'd ever experienced. "Hey in there," I said to Kate's stomach. "I'm your Aunt Lily. Can't wait to meet you." Kate smiled so big I thought her face might split. "I found out yesterday," she said. "It's a girl, a niece. I was going to have a niece." Something about that made everything more real. "Have you thought about names?" Aunt Bonnie asked. Kate nodded. "I like Bonnie Lily Williams." She looked at us shyly. "After my two favorite people." I didn't cry. I absolutely did not cry. Okay, maybe I cried a little. When we told our parents the baby's name, my mom actually hugged me. Not a stiff, formal hug, but a real one. "She'll be lucky to have you as her aunt," she said softly. The months flew by. Kate finished her first semester of community college with decent grades despite everything. Tyler got a part-time job and saved every penny for the baby. My parents converted their home office into a nursery, painting it yellow because Kate didn't want pink. Aunt Bonnie knitted enough baby blankets to survive a nuclear winter. I focused on school too, getting straight A's my senior year. When college acceptance letters started arriving, my parents were genuinely excited for me. They even threw me a small party when I got into my first choice, the first real celebration they'd ever given me. It felt good, if a little surreal. Kate's water broke 2 weeks early, right in the middle of my graduation ceremony. One minute I was walking across the stage to get my diploma, the next my dad was frantically waving from the audience. We rushed to the hospital, still in my cap and gown. The labor was long, 16 hours of Kate alternating between crying, screaming, and threatening to murder Tyler if he ever touched her again. We all took turns sitting with her, me, my parents, Tyler, his parents, Aunt Bonnie. By hour 15, we were all exhausted. But then, suddenly, it was happening. The doctor was telling Kate to push, and a few minutes later, a tiny crying human was placed on Kate's chest. Bonnie Lily Williams was 6 pounds, 7 ounces of perfect. She had Kate's nose, Tyler's chin, and skin a shade between theirs. My parents cried when they held her. So did Aunt Bonnie. So did I, if I'm being honest. That night, after everyone else had gone home or to the cafeteria, it was just me and Kate in the hospital room. Kate was dozing while I held baby Bonnie. "Hey there," I whispered to my niece. "You caused quite a stir. You know that? Changed everything." And she had. Looking at her tiny face, I realized how much had shifted in less than a year. Kate and I had gone from sisters surviving our parents to actual family. My parents had gone from people I feared and resented to people I was cautiously starting to trust. Aunt Bonnie had gone from a distant relative to one of the most important people in my life. None of it was perfect. My parents still slipped up sometimes. Family therapy was still a weekly necessity. Kate and Tyler were still figuring out co-parenting while finishing high school. I still had moments of doubt about forgiveness. But looking at baby Bonnie, I knew we'd figure it out. All of us. Together. As if sensing my thoughts, baby Bonnie opened her eyes and looked right at me. I swear she smiled, though the rational part of me knows newborns don't really smile. In that moment, I felt this fierce protectiveness wash over me. This little girl would never know what it felt like to be unwanted or unloved. She would grow up surrounded by people who adored her, including a mom, grandparents, and an aunt who had learned the hard way what family should be. "You're going to be fine," I whispered to her. "We all are."
My twin sister Emma started watching me like she was taking notes after I got engaged, and soon she was wearing my exact haircut and recording my phone calls without permission. On my wedding day, she brought me champagne in the bridal suite until I passed out, then she put on my wedding dress and walked down the aisle to marry my fiancé. I woke up locked in the bathroom while she was saying her vows in my voice, but she made one mistake during the Unity Candle ceremony that changed everything. When I announced my engagement to David at Sunday dinner, Emma burst into tears. You see, she'd just been dumped again by the 5th guy that year. He said I was too intense, she told me later while staring at my ring. After that, I started noticing her watching me. Not in a creepy way at first, more like she was taking notes. She'd watch how I moved my hands when I talked and started dressing exactly like me. David mentioned she'd been asking about our relationship, which felt sweet, but everything changed after the Tom incident. She seemed so excited when he showed interest, until everything crumbled, because on their very first date, she snapped at their waitress over her forgetting to bring her a straw. Emma took it as a sign that she was flirting with Tom. I had just managed to convince her that she would find someone better when it happened. During my office party a week later, Emma saw him flirting with me. I tried to shut it down ASAP, but it was too late. She saw us. The transformation started small after that. Emma got my exact haircut and grilled me about my skincare routine. "I just want to look polished like you," she said, and I felt guilty for being weirded out. I caught her practicing my smile in the bathroom mirror and stood there frozen in the doorway for a full minute, watching her face contort into expressions that belonged to me. Then things got genuinely scary. I was fast asleep at 2 a.m. when I heard my own laugh echoing from her room. Turns out she had recorded my phone calls without telling me. At the time, I tried to tell myself that I was imagining things, and for a while it worked, until a few weeks later, when I borrowed her laptop to make an Excel spreadsheet for work. Right there, sitting in her files, were dozens of spreadsheets documenting everything about me and David's relationship, color-coded by category, pet names in blue, inside jokes in green, intimate details in red. I thought that at least someone in my family would see through her crazy. But no, when I finally got them to confront Emma with me, she burst into tears. A classic. "Why is Sarah making me feel crazy?" crazy. They told me to stop being a bridezilla, and I was left standing there completely speechless, wondering what the protocol was for your twin sister stalking you. So when my wedding date finally came around, Emma was the last person I wanted to invite, because even aside from her quirkiness, she was known for having dramatic meltdowns, screaming at my cousin's wedding that everyone gets love but me, causing a scene at Dad's birthday when he didn't pay enough attention to her. But my parents forced me, saying she was finally getting help and I was being cruel. She's your twin, my mother said. She's trying so hard to be better. So I caved. Emma weaponized that invitation immediately. She started showing up at my workplace pretending to be me, telling my coworkers I had family emergencies. She knew every project I was working on, every deadline, every piece of office gossip. By this point, I knew Emma was a psycho bitch, but I never would have expected her to bring David into it. I was by myself when he texted me. I can't believe I ran into you today. I love our little moments. My heart stopped. I hadn't seen him. Turns out Emma had gone to his office pretending to be me. He'd kissed her hello. When I tried to tell him what happened, he thought I was forgetting things from wedding stress. Babe, you literally ate half my sandwich, he said, concerned. Are you feeling okay? When I showed my mom the texts, even she looked worried and promised to get Emma tested for something at least. Fast forward 6 months later to my wedding day. I hadn't heard from Emma since that day with David, and she showed up early with champagne and strawberries, her energy vibrating at a frequency that made my teeth hurt. My hands were shaking from nerves, but I noticed hers were too. She insisted on toasting repeatedly and kept refilling my glass. Hydration is important for photos. The room started tilting after the third glass. Emma steadied me with this fake concern. Here, sit down. You look pale. The room kept spinning faster. Through my blurry vision, I saw her pull my wedding dress out of a bag she'd brought. What are you doing? I tried to ask, but my tongue felt like cotton. Becoming you, she said calmly, like she was telling me the weather. I've practiced everything. She placed me on the floor almost gently, then leaned close. I know David's favorite positions, how he likes his eggs, that birthmark on his inner thigh. That's when I blacked out. I woke up on the bathroom floor, my cheek pressed against cold tile. The room swayed as I tried to lift my head. My wedding dress hung on the back of the door, but something was wrong. Emma wasn't there. I crawled to the door, my limbs heavy and uncooperative. The handle seemed miles away. When I finally reached it, my fingers fumbled uselessly, locked. From the outside, through the fog in my brain, I heard voices in the main suite. My mother's laugh, David's voice, Emma responding in my exact tone, using my inflections. The champagne glasses clinked again. I dragged myself to the toilet and forced my fingers down my throat. Nothing came up but bile. The substances were already in my system. I splashed water on my face, then drank directly from the faucet, trying to dilute whatever she'd given me. The bathroom window was painted shut. I grabbed my makeup bag and found nail scissors, working at the paint seal while my hands shook. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Time meant nothing in this drugged haze. Footsteps approached the door. I dropped to the floor, closing my eyes. The lock clicked. Emma entered, already wearing my dress. It fit her perfectly. Of course it did. We were identical twins. She'd even done her makeup exactly like mine, down to the beauty mark I always drew above my lip. She knelt beside me, checking my pulse. Her engagement ring, my engagement ring, caught the light. She'd thought of everything. The photographer wants some getting ready shots, she said conversationally. I told them you had a nervous breakdown and locked yourself in here. They all believed me. She dragged me into the bathtub, my body limp and unresisting. The porcelain felt like ice through my slip. She turned on the shower, cold water shocking my system. I gasped, sputtering. Can't have you making noise, she said, adjusting the water to a trickle. This should keep you quiet and conscious. I want you to see everything. She left, locking the door again. I lay there, water dripping on my face, fighting to stay awake. If I passed out now, it would all be over. The cold helped clear my head slightly. I could hear the wedding party gathering in the suite, my bridesmaids' voices, Emma laughing at their jokes, using my laugh. She'd studied me so well. I pulled myself up, gripping the tub edges. My phone. Where was my phone? I searched my clutch, the pockets of my robe hanging on the door. Gone. Of course. The scissors. I still had the scissors. I stumbled back to the window, working at the paint. My fingers kept slipping. Blood smeared the white frame where I'd cut myself. Sarah, we need you. My maid of honor called through the door. Only it wasn't me she wanted. Coming, Emma chirped in my voice. Just fixing my mascara. I heard them leave for photos. The suite went quiet. This was my chance. The window finally cracked open. Fresh air hit my face like salvation. But we were 3 stories up. No fire escape, no ledge. Just a straight drop to concrete. I turned back to the door. The lock was simple, the kind you could pick with a bobby pin. I found one in my hair, hands steadying with purpose. The lock clicked open. The suite was empty. Champagne glasses and makeup scattered everywhere. I stumbled to the hotel phone, but the cord had been cut. Emma had planned for everything. My legs gave out. I crawled to the door, peering into the hallway. Empty. Everyone was at photos. I needed to get to David, to anyone who would listen. The elevator seemed impossible. I took the stairs, gripping the railing, counting each step to stay focused. Second floor, first floor, lobby. I heard them before I saw them. The wedding party was posing by the fountain. Emma at the center in my dress, David's arm around her waist. She was laughing, head thrown back, exactly the way I laughed. I tried to run but stumbled, catching myself on a pillar. A hotel employee rushed over. Ma'am, are you alright? I tried to speak but my tongue wouldn't cooperate. He was already pulling out his radio, probably thinking I was hammered. I pointed desperately at the wedding party. That's not me, I managed. He looked confused, following my finger. Emma was kissing David's cheek for the photographer. My bridesmaids were adjusting her train. My mother was wiping happy tears. Security to lobby, he said into his radio. We have an intoxicated guest. I shook my head frantically, trying to pull away, but my legs buckled. He caught me, his grip firm but not unkind. Let's get you somewhere safe, he said. Emma must have seen the commotion. She whispered something to the photographer, then glided over in my dress, concern painted perfectly on her face. Oh my goodness, she gasped, covering her mouth. Emma, what are you doing? The security guard looked between us, understanding dawning. Identical twins, one in a wedding dress, one in a slip, soaking wet, clearly drugged. I'm so sorry, Emma continued, tears springing to her eyes on command. This is my sister. She's been having a hard time with my engagement. We thought she was doing better. No, I croaked. I'm Sarah. She's Emma. But even I could hear how insane it sounded. I was the one who looked crazy. Hair plastered to my head, makeup running, pupils dilated from whatever she'd given me. David approached, worry creasing his forehead. This was my chance. He would know me. There's something deeply unsettling about how methodically Emma studied Sarah's life. Those color-coded spreadsheets feel like more than just obsession. Like she's been planning this specific moment for months. He had to. David, I reached for him. Baby, it's me. He stepped back, the small movement shattering something inside me. Emma took his hand, playing the concerned bride perfectly. She's been doing this for weeks, Emma said softly, pretending to be me. We tried to get her help. The birthmark, I said desperately. You have a birthmark on your thigh. David's face went red. Emma squeezed his hand, a gesture I recognized as my own. She must have seen it when she broke into our apartment, Emma said. Remember? When we found her in our our bed? That had never happened. But David was nodding, creating false memories to make sense of the scene before him. The security guard's radio crackled. Should we call the police? He asked. No, Emma said quickly. She's family. We'll handle this. Could you just help us get her somewhere quiet? Maybe one of the conference rooms? They were all looking at me with pity now. My bridesmaids, my parents, David. In their eyes, I was the unstable sister who'd snapped at her twin's wedding. The security guard and David each took an arm, guiding me away from the lobby. I tried to resist but had no strength left. Emma followed, still playing the concerned sister. They brought me to a small conference room off the main hallway. Emma asked everyone to give us a moment alone. The security guard hesitated. I'll be fine, she assured him. She's my sister. She won't hurt me. When the door closed, her mask finally dropped. The concerned expression vanished, replaced by something cold and triumphant. You should see yourself, she said. Pathetic. I lunged at her, but she easily sidestepped. I crashed into chairs, sending them toppling. The noise would bring security back, but I didn't care. They'll figure it out, I gasped. You can't be me forever. Can I? She smoothed my dress, her dress now. I know everything. Your first date at that Italian place. The song you danced to in the kitchen last Tuesday. The way you bite your lip when you're nervous. She demonstrated, and it was perfect. Eerily, horrifyingly perfect. You made it so easy, she continued. Always posting everything online. Always talking about your perfect relationship. Did you think I wasn't listening? David will know, I insisted. When you're alone, he'll know. Will he? She smiled my smile. I've been preparing for months. I know exactly what he expects. The door opened. My mother peered in, concern etched on her face, but she was looking at Emma, not me. Sweetheart, the photographer needs you back. We can deal with, she glanced at me, this situation after the ceremony. Of course, Mom. Emma kissed her cheek, another gesture stolen from me. Could you stay with her? Make sure she doesn't hurt herself? My mother nodded, entering the room like she was approaching a wild animal. Emma paused at the door, looking back at me one last time. Don't worry, she said sweetly. I'll take good care of your life. The door clicked shut behind Emma, leaving me alone with my mother. She stood by the entrance, wringing her hands, her wedding outfit pristine while I sat there soaked and shaking. I tried to stand, but my legs wobbled like jelly. The substances Emma had given me were still coursing through my system, making every movement feel like swimming through molasses. My mother approached cautiously and helped me to a chair. Her touch was gentle but distant, like she was handling something fragile and dangerous. I grabbed her wrist, trying to make her understand. She pulled away and stepped back, shaking her head sadly. I pointed at myself, then at the door where Emma had left. My mother just patted my shoulder and told me to rest. She thought I was having a breakdown. They all did. Emma had laid the groundwork perfectly, telling everyone about my supposed jealousy, my attempts to sabotage her happiness. The conference room had a small bathroom attached. I stumbled toward it, using the wall for support. My mother followed, probably worried I'd hurt myself. In the mirror, I saw why everyone believed Emma's story. My hair was matted from the shower water, makeup streaking down my face in dark rivers. My slip clung to me, transparent in places. I looked exactly like the unstable sister Emma had described. I turned on the faucet and splashed more water on my face, trying to clear the fog from my brain. The cold helped, but not enough. I needed to think clearly, to find a way to prove who I really was. But Emma knew everything about me. Every detail, every memory, every inside joke with David. My mother handed me paper towels, watching me with that same pitying expression. I dried my face and tried to steady my breathing. The ceremony would start soon. Emma would walk down the aisle in my dress, say my vows, kiss my fiancé, unless I could stop her. I searched the bathroom for anything useful. No windows, no phones, just hotel toiletries and paper products. My mother stood in the doorway, blocking my exit without seeming aggressive about it. She was just being protective, making sure her troubled daughter didn't cause a scene at her sister's wedding. Back in the conference room, I noticed a pitcher of water on the side table. I drank directly from it, ignoring the glasses. The more I could dilute the substances, the better chance I had. My mother watched disapprovingly, but didn't stop me. Time was slipping away. I could hear activity in the hallway, guests arriving, the excited chatter of a wedding day. My wedding day. I had to get out of this room. I approached the door, but my mother gently blocked my path. She suggested I lie down on the small couch, maybe take a nap before the ceremony. Her voice was soothing, the way she used to talk to us when we were sick as children. But I wasn't sick. I was trapped. The door opened and my father entered, looking uncomfortable in his tuxedo. He'd never liked formal wear. He took in the scene, me, disheveled and desperate, my mother playing guardian. His face fell. I reached for him, but he stepped back, just like David had. Emma had gotten to him too. He mentioned something about getting help after the wedding, finding someone I could talk to. The words blurred together as tears stung my eyes. My own parents didn't recognize me. My father left to check on the ceremony preparations. Through the open door, I glimpsed the hallway filling with guests in their finest clothes. The wedding coordinator rushed past, clipboard in hand, making sure everything was perfect for the bride. For Emma, I had to try something different. Fighting them wasn't working. I needed to be smarter than Emma, to use her own perfectionism against her. She'd studied me for months, but she couldn't know everything. There had to be something only the real Sarah would know. I sat back down, pretending to calm myself. My mother relaxed slightly, probably thinking the fight had gone out of me. She started talking about how beautiful Emma looked in the dress, how happy she seemed. Each word was a knife, but I nodded along, playing the role of the defeated sister. The substances were starting to wear off, clarity returning in small waves. I could feel my fingers and toes properly now, the numbness receding, but I kept my movements slow and clumsy, letting them think I was still heavily sedated. My mother's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and smiled. The photographer was ready for more shots. She told me she'd be right back, just needed to check on something. I nodded drowsily, slumping in my chair. The moment she left, I sprang into action. The door wasn't locked from the outside this time. They thought I was too drugged to escape. I peered into the hallway. Wedding guests milled about, but no one from the wedding party was visible. I slipped out, keeping close to the wall. My slip was still damp, clinging uncomfortably, but I had bigger problems. I needed to find David before the ceremony started. He was the only one who might listen, who might notice something off about Emma's performance. The hotel was massive, with multiple ballrooms and event spaces. I didn't even know which one held my wedding, our wedding. I followed the flow of guests, trying to blend in despite my appearance. Several people gave me strange looks, but no one stopped me. I passed a supply closet and ducked inside. Housekeeping uniforms hung on hooks. I grabbed one, pulling it on over my slip. It was too big, but it was better than looking like an escaped patient. I finger-combed my hair and wiped the remaining makeup smudges from my face. Back in the hallway, I looked more like staff than a wedding crasher. I grabbed a stack of towels from a cart, using them as cover as I searched for the wedding venue. My legs were steadier now, the substances continuing to fade. I found the right ballroom by the flowers, white roses and baby's breath, exactly what I'd chosen months ago. Through the cracked door, I could see the space transformed into my dream wedding. Hundreds of candles, flowing white fabric, an altar covered in flowers. It was perfect, and it was about to be stolen. The bridal party was nowhere in sight, probably taking photos in another location, but I could see David's groomsmen gathered near the altar, joking and straightening their ties. My heart ached. Those were our friends, people who'd known us for years. Surely they'd noticed something wrong with Emma's impersonation. I set down the towels and crept closer. The wedding coordinator appeared, ushering everyone to their places. The ceremony was about to begin. Panic clawed at my throat. I was running out of time. The music started, soft and romantic. The doors at the back of the ballroom opened. The bridesmaids began their procession, smiling and glowing in their matching dresses. I'd chosen that exact shade of lavender because it complemented everyone's skin tone. Then came the flower girl, my cousin's daughter, scattering rose petals with serious concentration. The ring bearer followed, David's nephew, looking uncomfortable in his tiny tuxedo. Talk about method acting gone wrong. Emma spent months studying Sarah like she was preparing for an Oscar, except the prize is someone else's entire life. The music changed to the wedding march. Everyone stood. My stomach twisted into knots. Emma appeared in the doorway, arm in arm with our father. She'd chosen to walk with him instead of alone, even though I'd planned to walk by myself. A small detail, but it gave me hope. She didn't know everything. She looked radiant in my dress, every inch the blushing bride. The veil covered her face, but I could see her smile through the delicate fabric. My smile. She'd perfected it. I had to act now. Once she reached the altar, once the ceremony began, it would be too late. But what could I do? Burst in screaming that I was the real bride? They'd just think Emma's crazy sister had escaped. I watched David waiting at the altar, his face full of love and anticipation. He was about to marry the wrong woman, my twin sister. The thought made me physically ill. Emma glided down the aisle, taking her time, savoring every moment. The guests smiled and dabbed at their eyes. Our grandmother blew her a kiss. Our aunts whispered about how beautiful she looked. I noticed something else. Emma was holding her bouquet wrong. She had it gripped tightly in both hands, centered at her waist. I always held bouquets lower, cradled in one hand with the other resting on top. A tiny detail no one else would notice, but I did. She reached the altar. Our father kissed her cheek through the veil and placed her hand in David's. The symbolism of that gesture, giving me away to my husband, made my chest tight with rage. The officiant began speaking, welcoming everyone to the celebration of Sarah and David's love. Each word was torture. Emma stood there in my place, about to speak my vows, promise my life to my fiancé. I couldn't let this happen, but I also couldn't just rush in. I needed a plan, something that would make them see the truth without dismissing me as the crazy sister. The officiant asked if anyone had any objections. The traditional moment where someone could speak up. My heart pounded. This was it. This was my chance. But before I could move, Emma turned slightly, scanning the crowd, looking for me, making sure I wasn't there to ruin her moment. Her movement was subtle, but I caught it. David didn't seem to notice, too focused on what he thought was his bride. The moment passed. The ceremony continued. They were moving on to the vows. I backed away from the door, my mind racing. There had to be another way. Emma had prepared for months, but she'd made mistakes. The bouquet hold, walking with our father. Small things, but they added up. I remembered something else. The vows. David and I had written our own, spending weeks perfecting them. We'd kept them secret from each other, wanting to surprise one another on our wedding day. Emma couldn't know what I'd written. She'd have to improvise. The service corridor ran alongside the ballroom. I found another door, this one behind the altar area. Through the crack, I could hear David beginning his vows. His voice was thick with emotion as he spoke about the moment he knew I was the one, how I'd changed his life, how he couldn't wait to start our future together. My eyes burned with tears. Those words were meant for me, not the imposter standing across from him. Then it was Emma's turn. I held my breath, listening. She started strong, talking about love and commitment and partnership, generic words that could apply to any couple. But as she continued, I heard the hesitation. She was struggling, trying to sound like me while creating vows on the spot. David's expression shifted slightly. A tiny furrow appeared between his brows. He knew something was off. My vows would have been specific, personal, full of inside jokes and shared memories. Emma was giving him greeting card sentiments. She must have sensed his confusion because she suddenly stopped mid-sentence. The pause stretched too long. The guests shifted uncomfortably. The officiant looked concerned. Emma recovered, laughing softly and blaming wedding nerves. She continued with the vows, but the damage was done. David was looking at her differently now, studying her through the veil. This was my opening. If I could just get to him, make him see. The service door opened and a catering staff member entered carrying a tray. I grabbed their arm, whispering urgently that there was an emergency with the bride. They looked confused but concerned. I pointed toward the altar, where Emma was finishing her stumbling vows. The staff member hurried forward, discreetly approaching the wedding coordinator. They whispered together, both glancing at Emma. The coordinator looked alarmed and started moving toward the altar. Emma noticed the movement. Her voice faltered again. David reached for her hand, probably thinking she was having a panic attack. The coordinator reached them, leaning in to whisper something to Emma. I couldn't hear what was said, but Emma's body language changed instantly. She stiffened, her grip on David's hand tightening. She shook her head at the coordinator, who looked even more concerned. The guests were murmuring now, wondering what was happening. Our mother half rose from her seat in the front row. The officiant cleared his throat, trying to regain control of the ceremony. Emma suddenly swayed, her free hand going to her forehead. A classic Emma move. When cornered, play the victim. David caught her, looking worried. The coordinator called for water. The ceremony ground to a halt. I used the chaos to slip into the ballroom through the service door. In my housekeeping uniform, I looked like staff responding to the emergency. I grabbed a glass of water from a nearby table and pushed through the crowd gathering around the altar. Emma was sitting on the altar steps, fanning herself with her bouquet. David knelt beside her, holding her hand. The veil had been pushed back, revealing her face. My face. But something in her eyes was pure Emma, calculating even in her distress. I approached with the water, keeping my head down. My hands shook as I offered the glass. Emma reached for it and our fingers brushed. Her eyes snapped to mine. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Twin sisters, identical in every way except the one that mattered. She knew who I was. I could see the recognition, the fear, the determination warring in her expression. She took the glass and sipped delicately, never breaking eye contact. Then she smiled, my smile, the one she'd practiced in the mirror. David was watching her with concern, but also something else, doubt. The failed vows had shaken him. He was looking at his bride differently, noticing things that didn't quite fit. Emma stood, smoothing my dress. She thanked me for the water, her voice pitched perfectly to match mine, but her hand trembled as she set down the glass. The substances she'd given me were wearing off, but the stress of maintaining her performance was showing. The officiant suggested they continue the ceremony. Emma nodded, turning back to David, but he hesitated, studying her face. His hand went to her chin, tilting her head up, looking for something, looking for me. I held my breath. This was the moment. Would he see through her disguise? Emma must have sensed the danger because she suddenly pulled him into a kiss. Not a sweet, wedding ceremony kiss. A desperate, passionate kiss meant to distract and convince. The guests applauded, thinking it was romantic spontaneity, but I saw David's surprise. We'd agreed to save our first kiss as husband and wife for after the pronouncement. It was a small thing, but it mattered to us, to me. Emma didn't know that. When they broke apart, David's expression was unreadable. Emma smiled brilliantly, suggesting they finish the ceremony. She was pushing too hard, trying to rush rush through before more cracks showed. The officiant looked uncertain but continued. They moved on to the ring exchange. David's hands were steady as he slipped the band onto Emma's finger, but his eyes kept searching her face. When it was Emma's turn, she fumbled with his ring. Her hands shook visibly now. The stress, the substances wearing off, the mounting pressure, it was all catching up to her. The ring slipped from her fingers, hitting the floor with a metallic ping that seemed to echo through the ballroom. David bent to retrieve it, and I saw my chance. I moved closer, ostensibly to help look for the ring. As he straightened, our eyes met, really met, and I saw the flash of recognition, quickly followed by confusion. He knew me, even in a housekeeping uniform, with my hair a mess and no makeup. He knew me, but how could I be here when I was also standing in a wedding dress at the altar? Emma grabbed his arm, pulling his attention back. She apologized for dropping the ring, blaming nerves again, but David wasn't listening. He was looking between us now, his confusion growing. The officiant prompted them to continue. Emma practically shoved the ring onto David's finger, her movements jerky and ungraceful. Nothing like the smooth, practiced motions we'd rehearsed. They were almost at the end. Once they were pronounced husband and wife, it would be legally binding. Emma would have won. I had to do something, but what? Everyone still thought I was the crazy sister. If I spoke up, they'd just remove me. Then I remembered. The unity candle. We'd included it in the ceremony at David's mother's request. A tradition from his family. Emma wouldn't know the special way his family did it, the words his grandmother had taught us to say. The officiant announced the unity candle ceremony. 2 taper candles sat waiting, along with the larger pillar candle they would light together. Emma picked up her candle confidently, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. She didn't know what came next. David picked up his candle, waiting. When Emma just stood there, he prompted her gently, reminding her of the words. His grandmother leaned forward in her seat, eager to hear the traditional phrase. Why does Emma keep making these tiny mistakes if she studied Sarah for months? The bouquet grip, the ring fumbling, not knowing the family traditions. These details seem oddly careless for someone who planned this whole elaborate scheme so carefully. Emma's mouth opened and closed. She had no idea what to say. The silence stretched. The guests began to whisper. David's expression hardened, pieces falling into place. I stepped forward, not aggressively, just enough to be seen. David's eyes found mine again, and this time I mouthed the words, our words, the phrase his grandmother had taught us, that we'd practiced together, laughing at our terrible pronunciation of the Italian. His face went white. He looked at Emma, then at me, then back at Emma. The candle shook in his hand. Emma tried to salvage the moment, making up some generic statement about unity and love, but the damage was done. David's family was murmuring, his grandmother shaking her head. That wasn't right. That wasn't what Sarah had promised to say. David set down his candle without lighting the unity candle. The break in tradition sent ripples through the crowd. He stepped back from Emma, his eyes never leaving her face. The officiant looked lost, unsure how to proceed. Emma reached for David, but he moved away. His gaze found mine again, and I saw the war in his eyes. Logic said his bride was standing next to him in a wedding dress, but his heart knew better. Emma's composure finally cracked. She grabbed David's arm, insisting they finish the ceremony. Her voice was too sharp, too desperate, not like me at all. The mask was slipping, and everyone could see it. Our mother stood up, calling out to ask if everything was all right. Our father joined her, both looking concerned. The wedding coordinator hovered nearby, clearly unsure whether to intervene. David pulled free from Emma's grip. He walked toward me, each step deliberate. The entire ballroom held its breath. When he reached me, he touched my face gently, his thumb tracing my cheekbone. I leaned into his touch, tears streaming down my face. His hand was warm and familiar and home. Emma made a sound behind him, something between a gasp and a snarl. David turned back to the altar, to the woman in the wedding dress. His voice was steady when he spoke, asking her to tell him about their first date, not where they went. Emma knew that. But what happened when the restaurant's fire alarm went off and they had to evacuate? Emma's face went blank. She hadn't researched that far. It wasn't in any of my social media posts or the stories I'd told. It was just a small, perfect moment between David and me, standing in the parking lot sharing breadsticks we'd grabbed on the way out, laughing at the absurdity of it all. The silence stretched. Emma's mouth worked, but no words came, because she wasn't there. She didn't know. David walked back to the altar, but not to Emma. He went to the officiant, speaking quietly. The officiant's eyes widened. He nodded, then addressed the crowd, announcing that the ceremony needed to be postponed due to unexpected circumstances. The ballroom erupted, guests talking over each other, our families converging on the altar, Emma's voice rising above it all, insisting everything was fine, demanding the ceremony continue. But David was walking back to me. He took my hand, and I felt the rightness of it, even as chaos swirled around us. Emma screamed my name, my actual name, and the last piece of her deception shattered. Security arrived, drawn by the commotion. The wedding coordinator was trying to herd guests out of the ballroom. Our parents were demanding answers, and Emma stood at the altar in my wedding dress, watching her perfect plan unravel. She tried one more time, running to our parents, sobbing about how I was ruining her wedding, but she'd slipped, called herself Sarah, called me Emma. In her panic, she'd forgotten which role she was playing. Our mother's face changed, understanding dawning. She looked between us, seeing what she'd missed before. The way I stood, the way I held David's hand, 1,000 tiny details that screamed the truth. Emma realized her mistake. She tried to backtrack, but it was too late. The words were out there. Our father was asking questions now, his voice sharp. The bridesmaids clustered together, whispering, pointing out things they'd noticed but dismissed. David squeezed my hand, anchoring me as the truth spread through the room like wildfire. Emma's performance had been good, but not perfect. And now everyone was seeing the cracks, the places where she'd failed to completely become me. The security guards approached Emma, unsure what to do. This wasn't a typical wedding disruption. The coordinator was on her phone, probably calling hotel management. Our grandmother was crossing herself, muttering prayers in Italian. Emma made one last desperate play. She yanked off the veil and threw it at me, screaming that I'd stolen her life, that I'd taken everything from her. The words made no sense to the guests, but I understood. In her twisted mind, my happiness was theft. My relationship was something stolen from her. Our mother approached Emma slowly, like she was approaching a wounded animal. She spoke softly, using the tone she'd used when we were children, and Emma would have her meltdowns. But Emma was beyond soothing. She raged about unfairness, about always being second, about deserving love too. The wedding dress, my wedding dress, tore as Emma gestured wildly. The sound of ripping fabric was oddly final. The dream wedding was well and truly destroyed. David pulled me against him, shielding me from the worst of Emma's breakdown, but I couldn't look away. This was my sister, my twin, the person who'd shared my face but never understood my heart. Security finally intervened, gently but firmly escorting Emma from the ballroom. She fought them, still screaming, still insisting she was the real bride. Our parents followed, our mother crying, our father's face set in grim lines. The ballroom emptied slowly, guests unsure whether to stay or go. David's family surrounded us, his mother checking if I was okay, his grandmother patting my hand and muttering about evil eyes and protection prayers. The wedding coordinator approached hesitantly, asking if we wanted to proceed with the ceremony. I looked looked around at the chaos. Overturned chairs, scattered flowers, the unity candle knocked over and rolling across the floor. This wasn't how I'd imagined my wedding day, but David was here. The man I loved, who'd seen through the deception when it mattered most. He'd chosen me, the real me, even when logic said otherwise. We decided to postpone, not cancel, just postpone. We needed time to process what had happened, to deal with Emma, to figure out how to move forward. The coordinator nodded, relieved, and began the process of sending guests home. David and I slipped out through the service corridor, avoiding the main areas where Emma might still be causing scenes. We found ourselves in the hotel garden, the space we'd originally considered for the ceremony before deciding on the ballroom. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. David pulled me close, and I finally let myself fall apart. The substances, the fear, the violation of having my identity stolen, it all hit at once. He held me through it, solid and real and mine. When the tears finally stopped, we sat on a stone bench, watching the stars appear. David asked me to tell him about our first date, and I did. Every detail, every moment, every feeling. He smiled at the parts Emma couldn't have known, the tiny imperfections that made the memory perfect. We talked about Emma, about the signs we'd missed, about how far back her obsession went. David admitted he'd felt something was off from the moment she'd walked down the aisle, but he'd pushed the feeling aside, telling himself it was just wedding nerves. The unity candle had been the final straw. His grandmother had pulled him aside weeks ago, making him promise his bride would say the traditional words. When Emma couldn't, he knew. Combined with all the other small wrong things, he knew. My phone, which Emma had hidden in the bridal suite, was returned by hotel staff. The missed calls and messages were overwhelming. Everyone wanted to know what had happened, if I was okay, if the wedding was still on. I turned it off. Tomorrow I would deal with the questions, the rescheduling, the legal implications of Emma's actions. Tonight I just wanted to be with David, to reclaim something from this disaster of a day. We ordered room service and ate in our honeymoon suite, still in our wedding clothes, or in my case, the borrowed housekeeping uniform. It wasn't the romantic dinner we'd planned, but it was real. No pretense, no performance, just us. David found the hotel's speaker system and played our first dance song. We swayed together in the middle of the suite, my head on his shoulder, his arms around me. This was what Emma had tried to steal but couldn't replicate, the quiet intimacy of two people who truly knew each other. As we danced, I thought about my sister. She was probably at a hospital by now, our parents making sure she got help. The obsession, the breakdown, the elaborate deception, it all pointed to something deeper than just jealousy. I felt sorry for her, despite everything. She'd wanted so desperately to be loved that she'd tried to steal someone else's life, but love couldn't be stolen or faked or forced. It had to be earned, built, nurtured. Emma had never understood that. The song ended, but we kept swaying. Outside, the hotel was probably buzzing with gossip about the wedding that wasn't. Tomorrow would bring complications and consequences. But tonight, in this quiet moment, I had everything that mattered. David whispered that he loved me, the real me, and I believed him. Emma might have stolen my dress, my venue, my carefully planned day, but she couldn't steal this. The way he looked at me, the way he knew me, the way we fit together, that was mine, that was real, that was worth more than any perfect wedding could ever be. The next morning arrived with harsh sunlight streaming through the hotel curtains. Italian grandmas don't mess around with wedding traditions. Emma picked the wrong unity candle phrase to flub. David's family intuition kicked in faster than hotel security, and suddenly everyone's playing spot the difference with the twins while Emma's having her villain breakdown moment. My head throbbed from the lingering effects of Emma's substances, and David was already on the phone with the wedding coordinator, working through cancellation logistics. I watched him pace the room, his wedding suit wrinkled from sleeping in it, handling each vendor call with patient determination. The hotel manager knocked, entering with security footage from yesterday. They needed statements about Emma drugging me, but I waved them away. No police reports. This stayed in the family. The manager looked uncomfortable but agreed to keep it internal, mentioning only that Emma was banned from the property. My phone had accumulated over 100 messages overnight. Family members demanding explanations, friends who'd witnessed the chaos, vendors confirming cancellations. I scrolled through them numbly while David negotiated with the florist about donation options for the thousands of dollars of arrangements. My mother arrived at our suite around noon, her eyes red and puffy. She'd aged years overnight. Emma was at a psychiatric facility, she explained. Voluntary admission after the breakdown. The doctors mentioned something about delusional disorder, possible personality issues. She kept apologizing, saying she should have seen the signs, should have protected me. I let her talk while packing the honeymoon suite. The wedding dress hung in its bag, the tear Emma had made visible through the plastic. My mother touched it gently, then helped me fold the bridesmaid gifts I'd never gotten to distribute. We worked in silence, dismantling the remnants of my stolen wedding day. David's family arrived to help with the cleanup. His grandmother pressed protective charms into my hands, muttering about evil eyes and twins. His mother coordinated with the venue about donation options for the reception food. Everyone moved with quiet efficiency, transforming the disaster into manageable tasks. The photographer sent the photos they'd taken before the ceremony imploded. Emma looked radiant in every shot, her impression of me nearly perfect, but studying them closely, I could see the differences. The way she held her shoulders, the angle of her chin, tiny tells that she wasn't me. David deleted them all without asking. We spent the afternoon in the hotel's business center, sending emails to guests, arranging gift returns, canceling the honeymoon flights. Each task felt like dismantling a dream piece by piece. David handled the legal aspects, confirming with a lawyer that no marriage had occurred since the ceremony wasn't completed. My father appeared around dinner time, looking haggard. He'd been at the hospital with Emma all day. She was sedated but stable, he reported. The doctors wanted to keep her for observation, start her on medication. He asked if I wanted to visit. I shook my head. Not yet, maybe not ever. The wedding party gathered in the hotel restaurant that evening. My bridesmaids hugged me tightly, sharing how they'd noticed things off about Emma but dismissed them. The groomsmen tried lightening the mood with jokes, but everything felt forced. We were all processing the surreal events, trying to make sense of how a wedding became an identity theft crisis. David and I left early, walking through the hotel garden where we'd hidden the night before. The wedding arch was still up, white roses wilting in the evening heat. We stood beneath it, holding hands, reclaiming the space from yesterday's chaos. No vows, no ceremony, just us standing together in the ruins of our wedding day. Back in our room, we ordered Chinese takeout and ate it in bed, still wearing the hotel bathrobes. David showed me his phone, friends asking what happened, his workplace wondering about his honeymoon absence. We crafted a simple response together. Family emergency, wedding postponed, thanks for understanding. No details, no drama. The hospital called around midnight. Emma was asking for me. The nurse said she was lucid, medicated, calmer. I declined. David held me as I cried, not from sadness but from exhaustion. The adrenaline that had carried me through was finally depleting, leaving me hollow and shaky. The next day brought practical concerns. Our apartment needed attention. Emma had been there, we discovered. Nothing stolen, but things moved slightly. My coffee mug in the wrong cabinet, David's shoes rearranged. Tiny invasions that made our home feel violated. said. We spent hours reclaiming the space, moving everything back, changing the locks. My workplace was understanding about extending my time off. My boss had heard garbled versions of the wedding disaster through office gossip. I kept the explanation minimal. Family crisis, sister's mental health, need another week. She approved it without questions, her expression sympathetic. David's office was equally accommodating. His coworkers sent a fruit basket with a card saying they were thinking of us. No mention of the wedding, just support. We ate the pears while deep cleaning our apartment, scrubbing away any trace of Emma's presence. My parents visited that evening, bringing takeout and updates. Emma was responding to medication, they said. The doctors were optimistic about treatment. She'd admitted to planning the impersonation for months, studying videos of me, practicing my mannerisms. The depth of her preparation was staggering. They wanted to know if I'd press charges. I refused. Criminal proceedings wouldn't help Emma's mental state, and I just wanted to move forward. My mother cried with relief. My father looked older, shoulders bent with the weight of having two daughters, one recovering from trauma, one causing it. The wedding vendors were mostly understanding about the last-minute cancellation. Some deposits were lost, but others offered credits for future events. The venue coordinator called personally, expressing sympathy and offering a discount if we decided to reschedule. David thanked her but made no commitments. Our friends organized a small gathering at someone's apartment that weekend. No mention of weddings or celebrations, just pizza and board games. Normal, easy companionship. I caught myself laughing at someone's terrible charades performance and realized it was the first genuine laugh since the wedding day. David and I started couples counseling the following week, not because our relationship was damaged, but to process the trauma together. The therapist specialized in family betrayal and identity issues. She listened to our story without judgment, helping us untangle the complex emotions around Emma's actions. The hardest part was the grief, not just for the wedding, but for the sister I'd thought I had. The therapist explained that Emma's fixation had likely been building since childhood, fed by comparison and competition. Twin dynamics were complex, she said, especially with identical twins where identity boundaries could blur. Work resumed eventually. My coworkers were curious but respectful, accepting my vague explanations about family drama. I threw myself into projects, grateful for the distraction of spreadsheets and meetings. Normalcy felt like a luxury after the chaos. David proposed again 3 weeks later. Not a grand gesture, just quiet words over morning coffee in our kitchen. He wanted to marry me, whenever I was ready, however I wanted. City hall, backyard barbecue, destination elopement. He didn't care about the how, just the who. I said yes, crying into my cereal. We told only our parents about the engagement renewal. My mother offered to help plan, but I declined gently. Whatever we did would be simple, private, far from the elaborate production Emma had infiltrated. My father understood, squeezing my hand with silent support. Emma sent a letter from the facility a month later. Her handwriting looked shaky, probably from medication. She apologized, sort of. The words were more about her pain than my violation. She wrote about feeling invisible next to me, about the unfairness of identical faces but different lives. The therapist had warned me about this. Early treatment often focused on the patient's perspective before developing true empathy. I didn't respond. David read the letter once, then we filed it away. Maybe someday I'd be ready to process Emma's perspective, but not yet. The wounds were too fresh, the betrayal too profound. Forgiveness might come eventually, but it wasn't required on anyone's timeline but mine. We married at City Hall 6 weeks later. David's parents and mine were the only witnesses. I wore a simple sundress from my closet, carried grocery store flowers. The ceremony took 15 minutes. The officiant stumbled over our names once and we all laughed. It was perfect in its imperfection. The small reception happened at David's parents' house. His grandmother cooked enough food for 50 people despite our group of 10. We ate in their backyard, stringing lights between trees, playing music from someone's phone. No photographers, no coordinators, no elaborate plans to steal. I danced with David as the sun set, our families chatting around us. This wasn't the wedding I dreamed of, but it was real. No performance, no pressure, just two people choosing each other in front of the people who mattered most. Emma's shadow lingered at the edges, but it couldn't touch this moment. My mother took one photo on her phone, David and I laughing at something his father said, cake frosting on his nose, unposed, unplanned, unpolished. It became my favorite picture of us, proof that joy could exist after trauma, that stolen moments couldn't erase real ones. The marriage certificate felt heavier than paper should. Official, legal, binding in ways Emma's performance could never have been. We framed it and hung it in our bedroom, a private reminder of what was real versus what was imitation. Life settled into new rhythms, work, home, therapy, repeat. David and I grew closer through the shared trauma, our communication deeper after seeing how assumptions and silence had enabled Emma's deception. Something feels deliberately vague about Emma's letter. She writes about feeling invisible but doesn't really explain why she picked David's grandmother's wedding tradition to expose herself. The timing of her voluntary admission right after getting caught seems awfully convenient for avoiding real consequences here. We talked about everything now, even tiny concerns that might have gone unmentioned before. Emma stayed in treatment. My parents visited her weekly, reporting small improvements. She was painting in art therapy, they said, working through her identity issues with colors instead of words. I wasn't ready to see her work, to risk seeing my face reflected through her distorted lens. The 1-year anniversary of the almost wedding arrived quietly. David and I took the day off work, spending it doing absolutely nothing special. We slept late, made pancakes, watched terrible movies. The date had lost its power to hurt, transformed into just another square on the calendar. My parents mentioned Emma might be released soon, transitioning to outpatient treatment. The news sat heavy in my stomach. I'd built a life without her, established boundaries that felt protective and necessary. Her return to the world, even a limited one, threatened that peace. David and I discussed moving. Not far, just enough to create physical distance from the memories embedded in every local landmark. The hotel where she'd drugged me, the venues we'd visited together, the restaurants where she'd studied my mannerisms. Fresh scenery felt like freedom. We found a place 2 hours away, close enough for family visits, far enough for breathing room. The apartment was smaller but brighter, with no history of Emma's presence. We painted the walls ourselves, choosing colors she'd never seen, creating a space entirely ours. The move felt like closing a chapter. Packing our belongings, I found the nail scissors I'd used to escape the bathroom, the housekeeping uniform I'd worn to reclaim my identity. Physical reminders of the worst day becoming just objects, losing their emotional weight. Our new neighbors knew nothing of our story. To them, we were just another young couple, recently married, starting fresh. The anonymity felt like a gift. No sympathetic looks, no whispered gossip, no careful questions about how I was doing. I started running in our new neighborhood, something I'd never done before. The rhythmic movement helped process lingering anxiety, my feet pounding out the complex emotions that still surfaced unexpectedly. David sometimes joined me, our synchronized breathing a form of wordless communication. Emma sent another letter to our old address, forwarded by the post office. This one was different, shorter, more focused on my experience than hers. Progress, the therapist would probably say. I read it once, then tucked it away with the first one. Still not ready to respond, but no longer angry at its existence. My mother called one evening, crying. Happy tears, she clarified. Emma had made a breakthrough in therapy, finally understanding the violation of her actions. She wanted to apologize properly someday, when I was ready. If I was ever ready. No pressure, just hope. I hung up feeling oddly empty. Emma's progress was good for her, necessary for her healing, but it didn't erase my experience, didn't rebuild the trust she'd shattered. Her journey and mine had diverged that day in the hotel bathroom. Maybe they'd intersect again someday, maybe they wouldn't. David found me sitting on our new balcony, watching sunset paint the unfamiliar skyline. He brought tea and a blanket, wrapping both around me without asking what was wrong. He'd learned to read my Emma moods, the particular stillness that meant I was processing something about her. We sat together as darkness fell, not talking about sisters or weddings or stolen identities, just existing in the quiet moment, in the life we'd built from the wreckage of our original plans. It wasn't the fairy tale I'd imagined, but it was ours. Real, imperfect, and impossible to steal. Look at David, rolling in with tea and a blanket like a mind reader. Someone get that man a medal for fluency in Emma-style silences. If you made it to the end, drop a comment. I love reading all your comments.
At my birthday party, I planned to announce my pregnancy. Instead, my boyfriend handed me a gift box. Inside was a note that read, "I'm leaving you, you're useless, and I deserve better." Everyone laughed as he walked away. Our friends looked at me, waiting for a reaction. I just smiled, because he didn't know what I can do. 2 months later, he was drunk in front of my house, screaming my name. I had been with Justin for just over 3 years. He was charming and attentive, actually maintaining eye contact instead of constantly looking around for someone more interesting to talk to. Things moved pretty quickly between us. By our 1-year anniversary, we were living together in a cute little place we could barely afford. Not perfect timing financially, but the rent in this city is ridiculous no matter when you move, so our relationship wasn't perfect, but it felt solid. We had similar goals. Eventually buy a house, travel a bit, maybe kids someday. Justin was always more concerned with appearances than I was. He cared about what car we drove, which restaurants we were seen at, posting the perfect pics on Instagram. I should have paid more attention to that red flag, but hindsight is 20/20, isn't it? Anyway, about 4 months ago, I'd been feeling off, nauseous in the mornings, exhausted all the time. I took a pregnancy test mostly to rule it out. We were careful, but not that careful. And 2 pink lines. I still remember sitting on the bathroom floor, staring at that little plastic stick like it was written in hieroglyphics. I spent about a week processing before telling anyone. My best friend Barbara was first. She brought wine to our girls' night, and when I stuck to water, she knew immediately. She asked all the right questions about what I wanted, how Justin might react, practical things like insurance and maternity leave. It helped me organize my thoughts. As for Justin, I decided to wait. My birthday was coming up in 3 weeks, and it seemed like perfect timing. We'd already planned a small party at our apartment with our closest friends, and I thought it would be special to share the news with everyone I love at once. Again, hindsight. What a witch. The weeks leading up to my birthday were strange. I was dealing with morning sickness, which should really be called all-day sickness BTW, and trying to hide it from Justin. He didn't notice, which I attributed to him being busy. He'd been coming home later, spending more time on his phone, being a little distant. I figured he was stressed about something at work. My birthday fell on a Saturday. I spent the morning setting up while Justin went to pick up the cake, which took him nearly 3 hours, but whatever. Our friends started arriving around 6 p.m. Barbara and her husband, our friends Aaron and Sergio, my cousin Lana who was visiting, and a few others including Maria, who I'd known since college. The party was going well. Good food, plenty of drinks, sparkling water disguised as vodka soda for me, music, laughter. I'd planned to make my announcement after cake, and I kept catching Barbara's eye across the room. She'd give me these little encouraging nods that made my stomach flip with nervous excitement. Around 9 p.m., Justin clinked his glass to get everyone's attention. My heart practically stopped. Had he somehow found out? Was he going to steal my thunder? He made this whole speech about how special I was, how lucky he felt to have me in his life, all while looking me directly in the eyes. Then he handed me a small, beautifully wrapped box with a silk ribbon. The room went quiet. Everyone was watching, some with phones out ready to capture the moment. I remember thinking it might be an engagement ring, and having this split second of panic about whether I should still announce the pregnancy if he proposed. Then I opened the box. Inside wasn't a ring. It was a folded piece of paper. I opened it, confused, and read the words that are basically burned into my brain now. "I'm leaving you. You're useless, and I deserve better. Your stuff will be packed by Monday." I looked up at him, sure this was some kind of horrible joke, but his expression had completely changed. Cold, distant, almost amused. Then he said loud enough for everyone to hear that we were done, that it had been fun, but he'd outgrown me. And then he laughed, like actually laughed. A few people in the room laughed too, clearly thinking this was some kind of prank we'd planned. But then Justin turned and walked out the front door without another word. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood there, note in hand, pregnancy announcement dying in my throat, while our friends looked between me and the door, waiting for someone to yell, "Just kidding!" But nobody did. Barbara was the first to move. She crossed the room and took the note from my hand, read it, and muttered that he was an absolute bastard. Then everyone started talking at once. Confusion, concern, outrage on my behalf. And me? I just smiled. Not because I wasn't devastated. I was. Not because I wasn't humiliated. I absolutely was. But because in that moment, I realized something crucial. Justin had no idea what was coming. He thought he held all the cards. He thought he'd orchestrated this perfect exit, this public execution of our relationship where he got to be the powerful one. But he didn't know I was pregnant with his child. He didn't know that I'd found his secret credit card statements 2 weeks earlier when I was looking for a stamp in his desk drawer. He didn't know that I'd already seen the texts on his Apple Watch when he was in the shower. He really should have set up two-factor authentication lol. And most importantly, he didn't know that I'm not the kind of woman who falls apart when pushed. I'm the kind who gets strategic. So I smiled. I thanked everyone for coming. I assured them I was okay, I wasn't, and that they didn't need to worry about me. They did. I even cut the birthday cake Barbara had brought and passed out slices, as if celebrating the end of something rather than mourning it. Maria left almost immediately, claiming she felt sick. Interesting timing, right? Don't worry, we'll get to her. The others stayed, helping me clean up and offering places to stay, shoulders to cry on, alibis for murder. Kidding, mostly. By midnight, everyone was gone except Barbara, who insisted on sleeping on my couch despite my protests. Once we were alone, I finally broke down. The pregnancy, the betrayal, the humiliation, it all came crashing down at once. Barbara just held me and let me sob, not trying to fix anything with empty reassurances or those annoying, everything happens for a reason, platitudes people love to throw around when they don't know what else to say. When I finally calmed down, somewhere around 2 a.m., I told Barbara about the pregnancy. She wasn't even surprised, said she'd suspected from how I'd been acting lately. Then I showed her the credit card statements with hotel charges, expensive restaurants, and jewelry purchases that had mysteriously never made their way to me. I scrolled through the screenshots I'd taken of texts to M with heart emojis and plans to meet when I was working late. We both knew exactly who M was, especially after Maria's hasty exit from the party. We stayed up talking until dawn, weighing options, making plans. Barbara asked about telling Justin about the baby, but I was firm. He'd find out eventually, but on my terms, when I was ready, not a moment before. As for his affair with Maria and the financial lies, I wasn't going to sink to his level with petty revenge, but I would make sure the truth came out. All of it. Barbara looked at me with this mix of concern and admiration as I laid out my thoughts. She commented that I could be scary sometimes when I got that determined look in my eye. I just laughed. A real laugh. The first one since opening that horrible box. That night, as I lay in bed alone for the first time in years, one hand resting on my still flat stomach, I made 2 promises. One to my unborn child, that I would provide a stable, loving home no matter what, and one to myself, that I would emerge from this stronger than before. Justin thought he was writing the end of our story with that cruel note, and if there's one thing I've learned from all those true crime podcasts I listen to while doing laundry, it's that the best revenge requires patience, planning, and a clear head, all 3 of which I had in abundance. Next time I'll tell you what happened in the days and weeks after, including how I confirmed exactly who he left me for. Spoiler alert, it wasn't a surprise. And the first signs that his grand exit strategy wasn't working out quite as planned. First update. Hey Reddit, Lily here with the promised update. First, thank you so much for all the supportive comments on my last post. It's weird how strangers on the internet can sometimes be kinder than people you've known for years, isn't it? So, where did I leave off? Right. The birthday party from hell. Justin had just walked out after publicly humiliating me, leaving me shell-shocked with a pregnancy I hadn't told anyone about, except Barbara. Let me pick up from the aftermath. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee and pancakes. Barbara was still there, bless her, acting like nothing had happened while simultaneously checking on me every 5 minutes. She kept insisting I eat something, obviously concerned about the baby. I managed a few bites before the nausea kicked in. Morning sickness is such a joy. Justin didn't come back that Sunday, which was both a relief and torture. I spent most of the day alternating between numbness, rage, and this weird, detached sense of planning. I made lists. So many lists. Financial stuff I needed to sort out. Doctor appointments to schedule, people to inform. It was like my brain went into survival mode, focusing on practicalities to avoid confronting the emotional hurricane. Barbara helped me pack up some of Justin's things. Not everything. Just enough to make it clear I wasn't planning on him coming back. The whole time, my phone was blowing up with messages from our friends. Most were supportive, confused, wondering if I was okay. A few were from mutual acquaintances who seemed more interested in gossip than my well-being, and noticeably absent from the concerned chorus. Maria? Remember her from the party? The one who suddenly felt sick and left? Yeah. Monday morning arrived, and with it, reality. I called in sick to work, something I never do. I also made an appointment with my doctor to confirm the pregnancy and discuss options. Around noon, while I was researching tenant rights since the apartment lease had both our names, I got a text from Justin. I'll be by at 7 to get my things, make sure you're not there. The audacity, right? I stared at that message for a solid 5 minutes before responding with a simple, no, just that. No explanation, no alternative suggestion, just a firm boundary. He immediately called, and I immediately declined. Then I called Barbara, who rallied the troops. By 6:30, my apartment was filled with friends. Aaron, Sergio, Lana, who extended her visit, and a couple others. A protective barrier of people who loved me. Justin showed up at 7 on the dot, and his face when he saw the welcoming committee, priceless. He tried to act tough, demanded to know what was going on, but Aaron, who's like 6'4" and built like a brick wall, just handed him one suitcase with some clothes and essentials. Aaron told him firmly that the rest of his stuff would be available when he arranged a proper time and showed some basic human decency. For now, this was all he was getting. Justin tried to catch my eye where I sat on the couch, deliberately calm. He started saying something about how this was ridiculous, and to just let him get his things. I finally spoke directly to him, telling him he should consider himself lucky I hadn't changed the locks yet, and we could discuss the rest of his belongings once I'd had time to process his lovely birthday surprise. He started to argue, but but something in my expression must have warned him off. He took the suitcase and left, but not before muttering something about me always needing an audience. Rich coming from the man who dumped me in front of all our friends, don't you think? After he left, I cried again. Not for him, but for the future I thought we'd have. For the plans that now needed rewriting. For the child who deserved better than a father who could be so cruel. The next morning, I called a locksmith and had the locks changed. Now, about Maria. I had my suspicions from the moment she bolted from the party, but I needed confirmation. It came from an unexpected source. Sergio texted me Tuesday evening to let me know that Justin and Maria had been seeing each other. He and Aaron had spotted them together 2 months ago, but couldn't be sure it wasn't innocent. He apologized for not telling me sooner. It was like being punched in the stomach and simultaneously feeling vindicated. I'd known Justin was cheating. I just hadn't known with whom. Finding out it was Maria, someone who had been in my home, eaten my food, accepted my friendship, that was a special kind of betrayal. Instead of confronting either of them, I decided to wait, watch, gather information. Maybe I've been listening to too many true crime podcasts, but patience really is key in these situations. Over the next week, I focused on practical matters. I officially confirmed my pregnancy, 10 weeks along. I spoke with a lawyer about the apartment lease and division of assets. Thankfully, we weren't married, so no divorce drama. I froze our joint credit card and opened a new bank account in just my name. Basic protection stuff. What I didn't do was tell anyone except Barbara about the pregnancy. Not yet. It wasn't denial, it was strategy. I needed to get my ducks in a row first. 2 weeks after the birthday disaster, Justin texted again, asking to talk things through and collect more of his belongings. I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop near our apartment. Public place, daytime, on my terms. He looked terrible, which gave me a little jolt of satisfaction I'm not proud of. Unshaven, circles under his eyes, wearing a wrinkled shirt. He launched immediately into what I can only describe as a half-assed explanation. He'd been unhappy for a while, felt trapped, thought a clean break would be easier for everyone. I let him ramble for a while before I simply asked if Maria was making him happy. The look on his face, priceless. Pure deer-in-headlights shock. He stumbled through denials that were so transparent I almost laughed. I cut him off and told him I knew about Maria, about the hotel charges on his secret credit card, about the jewelry he bought her with money we supposedly needed for rent. I asked him to just be honest for once. He deflated like a punctured balloon. He tried the "it's not what you think" line, but I cut him off again. I told him what mattered now was that he could collect the rest of his things that Saturday at 2 p.m. Aaron would be there to supervise, and after that, I didn't want to hear from him unless it was through my lawyer. His voice actually squeaked when he repeated lawyer. He insisted we didn't need lawyers and could work things out ourselves. I stayed calm, even as my heart raced. I told him we were past that point, that he'd made his choice very clear at my birthday party, and I was just respecting it. As I stood to leave, he grabbed my wrist, not hard, but desperately. He asked about the apartment, specifically how I was going to afford it alone, saying my job barely covered half the rent. And that's when things clicked into place. The real reason for his concern, for this meeting. It wasn't about closure or collecting his things, it was about money. See, what Justin didn't know or conveniently forgot is that I'd been covering more than half the rent for the past year. His income had been drying up, his position more precarious than he admitted. He'd been living beyond his means, using my steady income as a safety net while presenting himself as the primary provider to our friends, and apparently to Maria. I smiled sweetly and told him I'd manage, adding that unlike some people, I actually save money instead of spending it on hotel rooms and jewelry. The color drained from his face. He knew I knew everything. I walked out of that coffee shop feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Not because I'd won some relationship battle, but because I finally saw Justin clearly for who he was. A man who cared more about appearances than substance, who lied to make himself seem more successful than he was, who abandoned me when I no longer served his narrative. Saturday came, and as arranged, Aaron supervised while Justin collected more of his stuff. I made myself scarce, spending the day at a prenatal yoga class. Highly recommend for anyone dealing with stress during pregnancy, by the way. When I returned, the apartment felt emptier but somehow more mine. I started rearranging furniture that evening, reclaiming the space. Over the next few weeks, I settled into a new routine. Work, doctor appointments, prenatal vitamins, careful budgeting. I wasn't just surviving. I was planning for a future that looked different but not necessarily worse than what I'd envisioned before. As for Justin and Maria, well, their romance wasn't exactly thriving. Through the grapevine, okay? Through Sergio, who heard from his cousin who works at the restaurant where they frequently argued in public, I learned that Maria was growing increasingly unhappy with her prize. Apparently, Justin had painted himself as much more financially stable than he actually was. Big surprise, right? The first real crack appeared about a month after our coffee shop meeting. I was at the grocery store, carefully comparing prices on prenatal vitamins, when I literally bumped carts with Maria. She looked startled, then guilty, then defiant in rapid succession. She greeted me awkwardly, saying I looked good. I replied that she looked tired, and she genuinely did. She had that same stressed expression Justin had worn at the coffee shop. An awkward silence stretched between us until she blurted out that Justin had told her we were separated already when they started seeing each other. According to her, he'd claimed we were basically done, just living together until the lease ended. I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She stumbled through what might have been an attempt at justification, or maybe an apology, saying she wouldn't have gotten involved if she'd known we were still together. I finally told her it didn't matter now, that she had him and should enjoy it. As I turned to leave, she called after me saying he wasn't what she thought, that he promised things he couldn't deliver. I looked back at her. This woman I'd once considered a friend, now diminished by her own choices. I simply told her that sounded like a personal problem that I couldn't help her with. About 6 weeks after the birthday party, I started showing. Just a little bump, but unmistakable to anyone looking closely. I decided it was time to be more open about the pregnancy. I told my boss first, who was amazingly supportive, offering flexible hours for my 3rd trimester. Then I gradually told other friends and family. Word travels fast in social circles. I knew it would eventually reach Justin, but I wasn't hiding anymore. This baby was happening with or without his involvement. 7 weeks post-breakup, as my pregnancy hit the 17-week mark, I received a series of increasingly frantic texts from Justin. Is it true? Are you pregnant? Why didn't you tell me? We need to talk immediately. Answer your phone, Lily. This involves me too. I didn't respond to any of them. Not out of spite, but because I truly didn't know what to say yet. I needed to process this new phase, to decide what role, if any, I wanted him to have in our child's life. The text continued, growing more desperate. I have rights, you know. You can't keep my child from me. Call me back or I'm coming over. That last one prompted me to finally respond. I told him not to come to my apartment uninvited, that I would call the police if necessary, and that I would contact him when I'm ready to discuss this civilly. He backed off for exactly 2 days. Then, as the title of my original post foreshadowed, he showed up. It was just after 11 p.m. I was in bed, reading a pregnancy book and making notes when I heard it. A car door slamming, then footsteps on the path to my door, then pounding, not knocking, pounding, and Justin's voice slurred but unmistakable. Lily, open the door! I know you're in there! We need to talk about our baby! For a moment, I just sat there, heart racing, unsure what to do. Call the police? Call Aaron? Hide and hope he goes away? Then I heard something that made the decision for me, crying. Justin was outside my door, drunk and crying, alternating between demands and pleas. He was saying he made a mistake, asking me to let him in, insisting that it was his baby too. And despite everything he'd done, some small part of me felt, not sympathy exactly, but recognition. The realization that his grand exit strategy, his new life with Maria, his escape from useless me, none of it was working out as planned. Reality had finally caught up with Justin, and it had the face of an unexpected baby and financial instability. I got out of bed, put on a robe, and approached the door cautiously. I didn't open it, but I spoke through it, telling Justin he was drunk and should go home, that we could talk tomorrow when he was sober. He shouted that he needed to see me now, needed to see if it was true, if we were really having a baby. I confirmed through the closed door that yes, I was pregnant, 18 weeks now, and yes, it was his. But this wasn't the way to discuss it, and he needed to go home. There was a thud against the door, his forehead or fist, I couldn't tell. He mumbled, so quietly I almost missed it, that Maria had left him. She said he wasn't who she thought, that he'd lied about everything. I couldn't help commenting that sounded familiar. He laughed, a hollow sound with no humor. He admitted he'd messed up badly and begged me to let him in, saying he just wanted to talk. I took a deep breath, one hand resting protectively on my small bump. I refused to let him in tonight, but offered to meet him tomorrow at the cafe on Main Street at 10 a.m. I made it clear that if he wasn't there on time, or if he showed up drunk again, that was it. No more chances. He was quiet for so long I thought he might have passed out. Then, softly, he agreed. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. He promised he'd be there. I heard him walk away, his footsteps uneven. A car engine started. Not his, thankfully. He'd called a ride. At least he'd done one responsible thing. As I climbed back into bed, my phone lit up with a text from him. I'm sorry for everything. For the party. For the note. For tonight. I'll make it right somehow. I didn't respond. Words were easy. Justin had always been good with words. But I needed actions now, especially with a baby on the way. Did I still love him? No. That died the moment he humiliated me in front of our friends. Did I hate him? Not anymore. Hate requires energy I needed for other things. I would meet him tomorrow. I would listen. I would set boundaries. And I would decide, not based on his needs or wants, but on what was best for me and my child. Second update. Hey Reddit. Sorry for the wait. Life has been interesting. So remember where we left off? Justin showing up drunk at my apartment after finding out about the baby? Well, I promised to meet him at that cafe the next morning, and TBH, I half expected him not to show. But there he was at 9:55 a.m., looking like absolute trash, and I mean that in the most objective way possible. Bloodshot eyes, same clothes as the night before, and this nervous energy that made him keep jiggling his leg under the table. The table was, literally, shaking. The first thing I noticed was he'd already ordered me a decaf latte. Which, okay, thoughtful, I guess? Except I've switched to herbal tea since getting pregnant because coffee makes me nauseous now. Small detail, but it kind of summed up everything about Justin, making assumptions about what I need without actually paying attention. Anyway, that meeting was a lot. He started with apologies, lots of apologies. Sorry for the birthday humiliation. Sorry for cheating. Sorry for the financial lies. Sorry for showing up drunk. It was like watching someone frantically check boxes on an I messed up form. I just sipped my tea, ordered to replace the unwanted latte, and let him talk himself out. There's something weirdly empowering about staying silent when someone expects you to respond, you know? When he finally ran out of steam, I asked the only question that mattered. What exactly did he want? He seemed thrown by the directness. started rambling about wanting to be involved and do the right thing, and maybe we could try again. I actually laughed at that last part. Not meanly, just genuinely surprised that he thought reconciliation was on the table. The conversation got real when I laid out how things would work going forward. I told him I'd already consulted a lawyer about child support and custody arrangements. His face when I mentioned the lawyer again, LOL. It was like watching someone realize they're actually in the deep end of the pool when they thought they were just dipping their toes. I explained that I wasn't keeping him from his child, but that trust had to be rebuilt from the ground up. That meant scheduled visits, financial responsibility, and consistently showing up, not just when it's convenient or Instagram-worthy. He kept trying to steer the conversation toward us as a couple, and I kept steering it back to us as co-parents. Eventually, he got frustrated, saying I was being cold and calculated. I pointed out that cold and calculated is exactly what his birthday note had been. The difference was I was being cold and calculated to protect our child, while he'd done it to protect his ego. That shut him up. Before I left, I handed him a folder containing info on the baby, ultrasound pics, due date, doctor details, along with what my lawyer had drafted regarding child support. Told him to review it, consult his own lawyer if needed, and let me know his thoughts once he'd had time to process. As I stood to leave, he grabbed my wrist again. Seriously, what is it with the wrist grabbing? And asked if Maria knew about the baby. I told him that wasn't my information to share, but that I hadn't gone out of my way to tell her. Then I gently but firmly removed his hand and walked out. Over the next few weeks, things got calmer. I focused on setting up the nursery, which basically meant converting half of my bedroom into Baby Central. Crib from IKEA that took me and Barbara 3 hours to assemble. Those instructions should come with a translator, I swear. Changing table from a secondhand store, and this adorable mobile with little stars that my mom sent. I'd been putting money aside aggressively, picking up some extra work editing social media content on weekends. Nothing glamorous, but it helped bridge the gap Justin's contribution had left. My mom also sent some money to help, which was both touching and slightly uncomfortable. I've always been independent, you know? Meanwhile, Justin was processing. He'd text occasionally asking about the baby or requesting pictures of the nursery progress. I'd respond factually, but keep emotional distance. Sometimes he'd try to veer into personal territory, asking if I was seeing anyone, nope, or mentioning some show we used to watch together. I'd gently redirect. Then came the incident. Yes, it deserves capital letters. I was at Target on a Saturday afternoon, loading up on diapers. You can never have too many, according to every mom blog ever. When I literally bumped carts with Maria. Again, what are the odds? This time was different though. She wasn't awkward or defensive. She actually seemed relieved to see me. She immediately asked how I was feeling, how the pregnancy was going, all while looking genuinely interested. Then she said something that caught me completely off guard. She apologized. Not a rushed, uncomfortable sorry not sorry, but a real, thoughtful apology acknowledging the pain she'd caused. She explained that Justin had sold her the same story he'd apparently fed multiple women, that we were basically over, just going through the motions, that I was holding him back from his true potential. She found out he'd been seeing another woman while dating her. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. We ended up getting coffee, tea for me, and having this surreal conversation about the man we both now saw clearly for who he was. Not a monster, just a deeply insecure person who needed constant validation and was willing to lie to get it. As we were saying goodbye, Maria mentioned casually that Justin had been let go from his job 2 weeks earlier. She thought I should know since it might affect child support. I thanked her for the info and headed home, processing this new development. I wasn't happy about Justin's job loss, it complicated things, but I appreciated knowing. That evening, as I was folding tiny onesies and listening to my favorite podcast, my doorbell rang. I checked the peephole, always check the peephole, folks, and saw Justin standing there. Sober this time, but looking rough. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. He started talking immediately, asking if I'd heard about his job, saying it wasn't his fault, that he was being set up. Then he asked if I'd seen Maria recently, sounding suspicious. I told him yes, we'd run into each other at Target. His face did this weird thing where it tried to look casual but just looked constipated instead. He asked what we talked about and I simply said, you, mostly. He did not like that answer, LOL. Then he started getting agitated, saying we were probably conspiring against him, that everyone was turning on him when he was just trying to do his best in a difficult situation. I reminded him that he created this situation with choices he made, and that playing victim wasn't going to work with me. That's when he broke down. Not dramatically, not movie-style tears, just crumpled. Said his life was falling apart. No job, no girlfriend, apartment he could barely afford, and a baby on the way he wasn't prepared for. For a brief moment, I felt that old urge to comfort him, to fix things. But then I remembered the cold words in that birthday note. You're useless. I deserve better. Instead of comfort, I offered clarity. I told him he had 2 paths forward. Continue the pity party and lose everything, or step up, take responsibility, and rebuild. For the first time since this whole mess started, Justin really listened. No interruptions, no excuses, just listening. When I finished, he nodded slowly and asked if we could talk inside. I hesitated, then agreed, but left the door open. Never fully close yourself in with someone unstable. We sat at my kitchen table and he asked thoughtful questions about the baby for the first time. Not surface-level stuff, but real questions about health, development, plans for delivery. As we talked, I realized something important. I no longer felt anything romantic for Justin, but I did want him to be okay. Not for his sake, but for our child's. Before he left, he promised to review the child support agreement and find a new job ASAP. He also, surprisingly, thanked me for not hating him when I had every right to. I told him hate takes too much energy, and I was saving my energy for more important things now. The next few weeks brought subtle changes. Justin found a new job, paying less, but steadier. He signed the child support agreement without argument. He even enrolled in a parenting class at the community center. As my due date approaches, things feel not perfect, but functional. Justin and I have established a cautious co-parenting relationship built on clear boundaries and expectations. He comes to doctor appointments when invited. He helped assemble the crib when I finally admitted defeat with those ridiculous IKEA instructions. Last week, at 7 months pregnant, I received a package from him. Inside was a journal, not expensive, just simple and practical, with a note that said, "For your thoughts, plans, and all the true crime podcast notes you want to write, you were never useless. I was just too self-absorbed to see your value." I didn't respond. Some things don't need acknowledgement. But I did start using the journal, mostly to document this journey so I can someday tell our child the complicated, messy, very human story of how they came to be. Next time, I'll update you on the birth, coming soon, and how Justin handled the reality of actually becoming a father. Because if there's one thing I've learned through all this, it's that people can surprise you. Sometimes with their cruelty, sometimes with their growth, but always with their humanity. Last update. Hey Reddit fam. It's been so long since my last update that some of you probably forgot about me, lol. A lot has happened, and I've been meaning to post, but having a newborn doesn't exactly leave you with tons of free time or functioning brain cells. So, the baby is here. Little Zoe arrived 6 weeks ago weighing 7 pounds, 4 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and her father's chin. The only feature of his, I'm not mad about her inheriting TBH. Labor was, well, let's just say all those YouTube birth vlogs I binged did not prepare me for the reality. 32 hours, people. 32 hours. The funny thing is, during those endless hours of contractions, I kept thinking about how much I'd changed since that birthday party from hell. 8 months ago, I was a woman standing in shock with a breakup note in my hand. Now I was bringing a whole human into the world. Life comes at you fast, doesn't it? Justin was actually at the hospital for the birth, which surprised pretty much everyone, including me. He showed up with this massive teddy bear that literally wouldn't fit through the door of my hospital room. Seriously, where did he think we were going to put that thing in my one-bedroom apartment? But he stayed. Through the waiting, through my not-so-ladylike screaming, through it all. Barbara was my rock, though. When things got intense and I was convinced I couldn't do it anymore, she was right there, reminding me that I was already doing it. Justin mostly hovered awkwardly in the corner, scrolling through his phone and occasionally asking if I needed anything. Which, I mean, at least he was trying. When Zoe finally arrived and they placed her on my chest, I had this moment of pure clarity. Everything we go through, all the heartbreak, betrayal, uncertainty, it all led to her. And I wouldn't change a single step of the journey. Justin cried when he held her. Not movie star tears, but this awkward, trying not to but can't help it kind of crying that made his nose run and his face blotchy. It was the most genuine emotion I'd seen from him in our entire relationship. The first few weeks at home were a blur of diaper changes, feeding struggles, and sleep deprivation unlike anything I've ever experienced. My mom came to stay for 2 weeks, which was both a blessing and a challenge. She kept reorganizing my kitchen cabinets because apparently my system makes no sense. But seriously, who puts colanders with the pots instead of with the strainers? That's just chaotic. Justin has been surprisingly present. Not in a live-in father way, but he comes by 3 times a week for scheduled visits. Sometimes he brings useful things like diapers or takeout. Other times he brings ridiculous baby clothes that are completely impractical but admittedly cute. Last week, it was a tiny leather jacket for a 6-week-old. I didn't have the heart to tell him she'll outgrow it before the weather's even cool enough to wear it. Our co-parenting relationship is still evolving. We have moments of tension, especially when he shows up late or cancels last minute because of work stuff. But we also have moments where it feels almost normal, like when he noticed I was struggling with a clogged milk duct and actually researched remedies, then showed up with cabbage leaves and a heating pad. If you know, you know. Financially, things have settled into a workable routine. Justin pays his child support on time, so far, and I've been able to work from home part-time doing social media management, not getting rich, but paying the bills. My landlord actually let me renew the lease in just my name without any drama, which felt like a small victory. The apartment feels completely different now. Justin's stuff is gone, replaced by baby gear that somehow takes up twice the space. I repainted the living room this soft sage green that makes me happy every time I see it. It's amazing how much your surroundings affect your mood, you know. Maria and I still run into each other occasionally. Our city isn't that big. It's less awkward now. More like running into a distant acquaintance than someone who blew up your life. Last time she was with some bearded guy who kept calling her babe every 3 seconds. She seemed happy, if a little forced about it. I genuinely hope she is. As for Justin, he's still struggling in some ways. His new job isn't going great, according to Barbara, who heard from Aaron, who plays basketball with Justin's coworker. Gotta love small city gossip networks. He moved into this depressing studio apartment that he's constantly complaining about. Sometimes when he comes to see Zoe, I catch him looking around my place with this expression that's hard to read. Nostalgia mixed with regret, maybe? The weirdest development has been Justin's apparent personal growth journey. He mentioned he's been seeing a therapist, which, wow. This is the guy who once told me therapy was just paying someone to listen to you whine. He's been reading parenting books and even joined some dad group on Facebook. Sometimes I wonder if aliens abducted the real Justin and left this pod person in his place. Anyway, my own life has taken some unexpected turns too. Remember how I mentioned working part-time from home? That actually came through a connection from Sergio, who recommended me to his sister's company. The work is interesting, the people are nice, and most importantly, I can do it while Zoe naps. When she actually decides napping is on her agenda, that is. And then there's Eli. Yes, there's an Eli now. He's the delivery guy who kept bringing my grocery orders during those first chaotic weeks postpartum. At first, I barely registered him beyond thank you, and please put the bags by the door because, hello, new mom zombie mode. But he started adding little notes to my deliveries, recommending items other parents had found helpful, or sometimes just a dad joke that would make me snort laugh. One day when I was particularly frazzled, hadn't showered in 3 days, pretty sure there was spit up in my hair, he dropped off my order and asked if I wanted him to help carry the cases of water to my kitchen. I hesitated. Strange man in my apartment and all that, but something about him felt safe. As he helped put away the groceries, we started talking. Turns out he's finishing his degree in environmental science, delivering groceries to pay the bills. He has a younger sister with 2 kids that he helps with regularly, which explains why he didn't run screaming from my disaster zone of an apartment. We exchanged numbers in case there were any issues with future deliveries. We both knew that was BS, but it was a comfortable fiction. We've been texting and he's come by for coffee a few times. It's nothing serious. I'm in no rush to dive into another relationship, but it's nice to talk to an adult who doesn't want to discuss diaper brands or sleep training methods. Last week when Justin came for his visit, Eli was just leaving. The look on Justin's face was complicated. Later, he casually asked who that guy was. I kept it vague, partly because there's not much to tell yet, and partly because it's not really his business. He made a few comments about moving on fast before seeming to catch himself and backing off. Barbara thinks I should go for it with Eli, but I'm taking it day by day. After everything that's happened, I've learned that rushing into things never ends well. Besides, Zoe is my priority right now. Dating as a single mom is a whole different ballgame, and I'm still learning the rules. Speaking of Barbara, she's been my constant through all of this. When I'm overwhelmed and convinced I'm failing at motherhood, she brings over iced coffee, my first love, finally back in my life now that breastfeeding is going better, and reminds me that all new parents feel this way. She takes Zoe for a few hours sometimes so I can shower, nap, or just stare at a wall in blessed silence. Yesterday was actually my birthday. 1 year since the box that changed everything. Instead of dwelling on that memory, I had a small gathering at my place. Barbara and her husband, Aaron and Sergio, my cousin Lana, and a few other close friends. Justin stopped by briefly to drop off a gift, a surprisingly thoughtful bracelet with Zoe's birthstone, but didn't stay. As I looked around at my little apartment filled with people who truly care about me, at my daughter sleeping peacefully in her bassinet, at the life I've built from the ashes of what I thought I wanted, I felt something I hadn't expected: gratitude. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe Eli will become something meaningful. Or maybe he'll just be a brief, kind chapter in this story. Maybe Justin will continue growing into a decent co-parent. Or maybe he'll revert to old patterns. Maybe I'll stay in this apartment forever. Or maybe I'll eventually find a house with a yard for Zoe to play in. What I do know is that I'm not the same woman who stood holding that note on her birthday last year. That woman was shattered but determined. This woman is rebuilt, stronger at the broken places. So I guess if there's any moral to this long, messy story, it's that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can lead to the best version of yourself. Not immediately, not easily, but eventually. P.S. If you're wondering what happened to that giant teddy bear Justin brought to the hospital, it's currently serving as a barricade to keep Zoe from rolling off my bed when I need to put her down for 2 seconds to pee. So, I guess it found its purpose after all. For those asking what happened to the infamous breakup note, I kept it. It's in a memory box in Zoe's closet, along with her hospital bracelet, first lock of hair, and the positive pregnancy test. Someday, when she's old enough, we'll tell her the whole story. Not to burden her, but because it's part of her history too.